Devon, standing near the stairs, muttered, "Yeah, but why? You said all this already. Why us? What's the point of turning us into freaks?" Kai stopped in front of him, eyes gleaming. "Because I'm building an army, Devon." Travis scoffed, looking around. "An army? For what?" Kai Vamp sped right to him, grabbing the collar of his hoodie and pulling him close. "See, a wise man doesn't build an army after war is declared. No no no. He builds it before. Big enough, terrifying enough, that no one even thinks of declaring one." He smirked, backing up, then pointed one by one at them. "And you all lucky bastards will have the honor of being my foot soldiers. But first, we've gotta army you properly." He produced a palm-sized wooden box, the missing Niffin box. "And this," he said, "is your upgrade kit." John, still rubbing the phantom ache of a broken neck, barked, "Yeah? Arm us with what, exactly?" Kai turned, amused. "Ah, thank you, John, for the stupidly obvious question." He walked toward the middle of the warehouse and addressed all of them. "In this world, there are special individuals, magicians. They have a connection, a tether to the world. And through that tether, they can make the world act according to their intent, that is magic. And those people? Magicians." Tom frowned. "What kind of connection?" Kai shrugged. "Imagine looking at the world and saying, 'I want this,' and then the world replies, 'All right, bet.' That's the power of intent. And you, my blood-sucking friends, are about to see if you can access that power." Julius scoffed, "Really? Magic?" Kai gave him a side glance. "You do realize you're dead, right? And walking? Complaining about magic is ironic even for you." Julius growled, "Killed by you. Details." Kai waved him off. He turned to the others while thinking. Normally, in the world of the Vampire Diaries, when a witch turns into a vampire, they lose their magic. But that's because their magic is tied to a core internally, connected to nature. Here? Magic's external. It comes from a wellspring. And so what happens if a vampire drinks that magic in? What happens if I can build an internal reservoir like siphoner magic but fused with wellspring access? He grinned. "Let's find out, shall we?" Hours later, Kai had drawn a full magical circle on the ground using chalk and blood. 7 candles stood tall around the edges. At the head of the circle was an elevated platform with the Niffin box. "Okay." Kai looked at them with a serious expression. "So, who wants to pull more than just rabbits out of a hat?" No one moved. Kai sighed dramatically. "John, be a dear, and come lie down, would you?" Compulsion slid into place, John's legs obeyed to everyone's shock, John's body moved on its own, his eyes wide in panic as he lay on the platform. "Thank you for volunteering," Kai said with mock cheer. From his jacket, he pulled out a silver pocket knife, and without hesitation, carved 2 pentagrams into John's wrists. The sigils glowed with magic, preventing his vampire healing from kicking in. Kai began chanting Latin. "In virtute nexum, vas sanguinis, conj vis aliena." The box flared blue. Blue radiance flared from the box, a glowing thread siphoning straight into John's open wounds. He screamed and lost consciousness as the wellspring current poured through him. The circle hummed with energy. Kai's grin widened. "Take it in, good, good." The light reached a peak, then dimmed. Kai ended the spell, kneeling. "John? Wake up! How do you feel?" John stirred. Kai placed a hand on his chest. For a heartbeat Kai sensed it, real wellspring magic thrumming under John's skin. Success. Then his expression fell, veins lit sapphire beneath the flesh, spreading like cracks in glass. The blue shimmer that laced John's veins intensified. "No, no no! Phoom!" John exploded into blue fire, screaming as his body was immolated, reduced to ash within seconds. Ah, hell! Larry stepped back. He's dead. Travis whispered, he'll come back, right? I mean, we're immortal. Kai looked at them all. Not against fire, you're not. Tom shook his head. This is insane. This isn't right, man. Kai snapped, glaring. You lost the right to decide what's right and wrong the night you were dragging that girl into that alley, Tom. He stepped toward him. Now why don't you come here so we can? His phone rang. Kai paused. Glanced down. Jules. He answered. Jules? Hey, calm down. What happened? His face tensed. You what? I'm on my way. He pocketed the phone, shot the trembling vampires a warning glare. Recess. Don't touch anything. I've gotta run. Then with a gust of wind and blur of movement, Kai Vamp sped away, leaving behind a flickering circle, a pile of blue-tinged ash, and 6 terrified vampires staring at a box humming ominously in front of them. And check out my new story Sukuna on ATG on my Patreon. Patreon.com/FredoZY. Chapter 29, Dive. The second Kai stepped onto the grounds of Breakbills, he knew exactly where to go. Julia's frantic call hadn't come with many details, but the tremor in her voice was all he needed, plus she'd be with Marina at the dean's office trying to steal back Marina's old memories, not that Julia was aware though. As he approached the familiar old wing near the East Tower, the same one students avoided unless they were mid-breakdown, he heard raised voices. 2 figures stepped out into the hallway, heated in a furious exchange. Katie's voice cut through first. He's not going to wake up, Jules. That's the whole point of the fucking Scarletti web, you don't wake up from it, especially not when taken as far as you did. Kai narrowed his eyes. Ah yes, the Scarletti web, that was what Marina and Jules used in the show to trap Q. As the 2 women spotted him, Julia's expression twisted, eyes shimmering, jaw clenched, like she'd been holding tears behind her teeth. Katie stopped mid-runt, still furious but startled by his arrival. Kai raised a brow, folding his arms. Please don't tell me you did something stupid, Julia. Katie pointed an accusing finger. She did. Quentin's in a goddamn coma spell, he's not waking up unless she reverses it, which spoiler she can't. Kai turned his gaze to Julia, whose silence was deafening. His voice dropped, suddenly cold. I assume Marina was involved. Julia and Katie both blinked in surprise. How do you know Marina? Kai just exhaled, already walking past them. No time for that. Katie, take me to Quentin. Julia, once this is over, you and I are going to have a long talk. He followed Katie through the halls, his mind racing. Damn it, Julia. I really hoped you wouldn't make the same mistake again, that this time you'd learn. But no, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Especially a magician. Still, this wasn't just about her anymore. Quentin needed help. And truth be told, Kai couldn't blame the Julia entirely. Quentin had dismissed Julia, brushed her off like she was nothing when she needed him the most. Part of him deserves this, Kai thought darkly. He turned his back on someone who cared, and now he's facing the cost. But it's still not how it's supposed to end, and she took it too far. They reached the building. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Fog, Penny, Elliot, and another teacher were already there. As Kai entered behind Katie and Julia, Elliot whipped around. Whoa, what is the hedge bitch doing here? Elliot asked. And where the hell have you been, Kai? Kai, cool and unbothered, adjusted his jacket. I've been busy. Katie added, not skipping a beat. It's her fault Quentin's like this. Fog groaned. Fuck, Julia, of course. Penny stepped forward. What the hell did you do? Julia, finally breaking, said through tears, look, I have the exact wording of the spell. I can give it to you. Fogg, adjusting his glasses, cut her off coldly. Too late. It was supposed to be a joke, she began. Elliot barked a laugh. Bullshit. You did it to get even. Julia yelled, oh, fuck you. Somebody help him. Her eyes found Kai. Please. Fogg sighed heavily. If I had the exact spell an hour ago. But Kai wasn't listening anymore. He was already moving. The room followed his gaze to the figure lying motionless on the mattress. Quentin. Kai knelt beside him, muttering under his breath. Oh, okay. How exactly do I do this particular bit? He placed both hands on either side of Quentin's head and then turned sharply toward the chaos behind him. Can you fucking idiots shut up already? Right as Penny shouted, do you even know where he is right now? Fogg demanded, what the hell are you doing, Kai? Kai didn't look up. Something helpful, I hope. You should try it sometime. Dash. Inside the web. The world tilted the moment Kai made contact. He felt himself being sucked in. Light folded around him, and suddenly he was inside a mental hospital. White walls, gurneys. Shuffling patients in restraints. Someone was screaming down the hall. Kai looked down. White shirt, white pants, and white shoes. His lips curled. Oh hell no, is this fucking spell trying to assimilate me too? He focused and in the blink of an eye, the clothing melted away, revealing his usual attire, the air stilled and the patients vanished. Better. He pushed open a door. The room shifted. Now he was somewhere else. A modest living room that was too clean. On the couch sat a stiff, grey-haired man, face vaguely familiar. Quentin's father. Kai frowned. Don't have time for this. He turned and the door was gone. Damn it. Another space in another memory. He was lost inside a maze of Quentin's subconscious. But after a while Quentin stood beneath white beams in an endless void. Floating above, a chessboard hovered, suspended midair. He wasn't alone. Jane Chatwin, looking no older than 16, stood beside him. And nearby, the Madness Maker Q's personal boogeyman lurched silently in the dark. You sure you want to play? Jane asked softly. Quentin stared ahead. No. I'm not sure of anything. Except I'm tired. Jane tilted her head. Tired of? He whispered, fighting. Trying to be someone I can respect, and realizing I'm just nothing. Jane's voice dropped. You built the hospital. You conjured your father. You're exhausted, but you also built a way out. Otherwise, why are he and I here? Before Quentin could answer, a wet squelch echoed. Quentin and Jane turned in time to see the Madness Maker gasp and a hand punched through its chest, clutching its still beating heart. It collapsed in a heap. Quentin's eyes widened. You? How are you here? Kai, calm as ever, held the heart up casually. Well, just like Penny. Had to drop in for a little, heart to heart. He tossed the heart aside like garbage. Turning to Jane, he gave a wink. Well, hello, fairy tale. Jane nodded. Hi. Kai clapped his hands. So what are we waiting for? Let's go. He turned back to Quentin. Wake up. Quentin gasped, violently lurching upward as he vomited a scorpion, coughing and shaking. Everyone jumped. Kai stood, brushing dust from his knees before walking over to stand beside a still distressed Julia. Hey, that actually worked. Not bad for my first head dive. Elliot rushed over, patting Quentin on the head. Somebody woke up. Penny exhaled. Took your damn time. Fogg muttered, somebody get him some brandy. Elliot practically floated toward the liquor. Flying in. Caddy turned to Kai, stunned. What the hell did you do? Kai shrugged with a grin. Little dumpster dive into QS head. Took a wrong turn into a mental hospital and got lost in a maze of daddy issues, depression, and repressed trauma. Elliot snorted with laughter. Okay, I take it back, I missed you. But then he stopped mid-giggle. Wait, where's the hedge bitch? Everyone looked around. Julia was gone. Kai stared at the empty space she'd occupied for a while and sighed. What to do now? And check out my new story Sukuna on ATG on my Patreon. Patreon.com/FredoZY. Chapter 30, Dose of Fear. The light in Dean Fogg's office were glowing low by the time he called Kai in. He stepped inside, casually shutting the door behind him. Fogg didn't look up right away, simply ran a thumb across the rim of his tumbler of whiskey. Finally, without preamble, he said, "Do you know how many times something has truly taken me by surprise, Mr. Parker?" Kai's brow arched. "Enlighten me." Fogg chuckled dry, tired. "MNNN, almost never anymore." "But," he raised a hand, gesturing to his own face, "well, considering the state of my eyes and hands, I suppose I should have known there were still a few left. Today was one of those days." He rose from his chair with a slight groan and crossed the room to lean on the edge of his desk. He took off his glasses. Even Kai, unbothered by most things, glanced once. The Dean's eyes were pale, touched with a cloudy milky sheen, fragile, but still intense. "So tell me, Kai," Fogg said slowly, looking at him now without filters or formalities, "how do you just keep pulling surprises right out of your arse?" Kai shrugged, smirking. "Some people juggle, others sing, but me? I ruin expectations and break magical protocol. Gotta have a talent." Fogg almost smiled. But before he could respond, Kai tilted his head and cut in, voice dropping into something quieter sharp. "You knew Julia wouldn't just give up on magic after that first entrance exam, didn't you?" That stopped Fogg. The Dean's expression hardened, thoughtful, unreadable. He was silent for a long moment. Then, a slight nod. Kai took a step closer, folding his arms. "And what were the odds, that she'd end up meeting another one of your expelled students? One whose memories you had wiped clean, no less." Fogg's silence was heavier this time. "I suppose I shouldn't be surprised you figured out she was once a student." Kai smirked. "Oh please, it wasn't exactly hard to deduce. Not with how she knew just enough to get dangerous." Fogg sighed and looked away. "I had hoped those two wouldn't find each other. That she wouldn't stir those embers back to life." Kai raised an eyebrow. "Gee, if only she'd been admitted, then this whole mess could have been avoided." "Shocking, truly." Fogg gave him a look, as if he wanted to respond, then pivoted completely. "Do you like magic?" he asked instead. The question was abrupt. A deflection. Kai chuckled, not fooled for a second. "That's a strange question, Dean. It's not really about liking or hating magic. It's about what it opens up, the access, the ability to move between limitations. To mold something immaterial into tangible, terrifying potential." He walked to the window, staring at the flicker of moonlight catching the broken archways of the east wing. "Magic is a blade, a promise, a noose, and a door all at once. The question isn't whether I like it." He turned slowly, eyes gleaming. "The truth is I need it. So yes, I do like it." Fogg studied him. Then, for the first time tonight, he smiled. Genuinely. Weary but real. "Well, I've heard all I need to hear." He placed his glasses back on. "Good night, Kai. Now get the hell out of my office." Kai gave a mock salute. "As you command, almighty and milky-eyed." Fogg just sighed. Out. Dash. Kai exited the office with slow steps back into the quiet corridors of Brakebills, where the wards hummed low, and also the secret entrance Elliot had shown him. He paused, glanced around. Empty. He cracked his neck once, rolled his shoulders, and then vamp speed away in a blur. Marina stood near the center of the room, her fingers grazing the smooth, ornate edges of a wooden box, her prize, her salvation. She was practically glowing with anticipation. Wow! She breathed out, voice dripping with awe. Her eyes sparkled, the adrenaline of possibility racing through her veins. I kind of can't believe I ever thought I knew anything. Julia, standing across from her, watched with visible unease. Something was wrong. The box hadn't even been opened, and yet Marina was acting like it had already given her everything. Marina turned, flashing a wicked grin. I'd like to share now, some of it. With some of you. Without another word, she waved her hand lazily in a series of gestures. Julia's body jerked forward. Her hand raised involuntarily. Wait! The room was filled with the sound of a violent sizzle. Julia screamed in agony as the magical stars etched into her arm were overwritten by a burning X. As Marina was about to say something, the door exploded open. A massive pulse of force shattered the frame, blowing it off its hinges. Furniture toppled. Every hedge magician in the room froze, some already preparing to cast, some backing away. Julia almost collapsed to the floor, clutched her seared arm. Marina took a step forward, pushing Julia aside instinctively. Who the fuck are you? She spat. But Julia, blinking through tears and pain, looked up and froze. Kai. The man who stepped through the ruined threshold wore calm like a tailored coat. His eyes locked not on Marina but on Julia's arm. He didn't speak right away. Then, pardon my intrusion, Kai said softly. I let myself in. His voice was pleasant, too pleasant. Julia recognized it as the calm before an inevitable storm. Marina's face twisted. How did you get past my wardings? How did you find us? Kai stepped forward slowly, hand lifting. Dangling from his fingers was a lock of hair. Without looking at her, he handed it to Julia. Locator spell, he muttered. One of Marina's hedge magicians, a broad-shouldered man with dark skin and braids, reacted immediately after that. He flicked his wrist glyphs already forming in the air. But before the spell was even halfway formed, Kai was behind him, hand on his shoulder. The man screamed as Kai's palm glowed red, siphoning magic straight from his connection with the wellspring. Everyone froze. Another hedge magician that was beside the man, an Asian man, also tried to cast. He didn't get far. Kai lifted a finger lazily and murmured a wordless curse and used the pain-inducing spell to cause aneurysm. The man screamed, blood pouring from his eyes, ears and nose as he crumpled to his knees, clawing at the air. The room fell into utter silence. Kai looked around slowly, eyes deadly calm. Anyone else want to try me tonight? No one moved. Good. He turned to Marina. To answer your other question, he began. I merely nullified your warding. And how I did that? He smirked. Well, that's for you to never find out. Marina's hand was already behind her back, silently forming a curse. But she was too slow. Kai was on her in a blur, fingers coiled around her wrist. She gasped, and so did everyone else who weren't expecting the sudden motion. He leaned in, one finger gently resting against her lips. You hurt my friend, Marina, he said softly, and now, you've scarred another I hold dear. Julia was trembling, confused, and afraid, her hand still scorched and bleeding. Marina began shaking her head once, twice. But it was already too late. Kai whispered. Torsion fut mort de l'esprit. Her hand immediately burned, a jagged, creeping rash forming in the shape of a spiral symbol, pulsing with faint red glow. She staggered back, shrieking. What have you done to me? Kai's eyes were still cold, unblinking. I placed a hex on you, he said simply. He leaned forward again. An insanity hex to be precise. Gasps rippled through the room. This mark will twist your mind until nothing remains but violence, screaming, and murder. In time, the magic will become irreversible. Your brain will rot in real time. Marina stared in horror at her hand, unable to stop the tremor now running through her body. This, Kai said calmly, is your punishment for your transgressions. He stepped back, fixing her in his gaze. And one more thing, if you want any hope of reversing it, you will give Julia every resource she needs to further her magic. Is that clear? Marina, too shaken to speak, simply nodded rapidly. Kai raised his hand to deliver another line when suddenly, a blast of light consumed him and Julia. In a blink, they were gone. Dash! Kai landed on his feet in the middle of a quiet, grassy field under a pale grey sky. What the fuck, he muttered, whirling. Julia stood behind him, hair a mess, eyes wide. He scanned the space, which was now void of any magical signature he recognized. Did one of them apparate me away? TCH. Whatever. He turned to Julia. You okay? She nodded slowly, then looked down at her arm and back at him. What the hell was that back there, Kai? Kai exhaled. There's a lot you don't know, Julia. She looked at him, then lifted the lock of hair he had handed her. What the hell is this, Kai? He winced. Okay, wait. That was part of a tracking spell. Nothing nefarious. I just needed to find you. Julia shook her head. They kicked me out, Kai. Marina used me. Her voice cracked as Kai hugged her, and tears welled again before asking. How's he? Kai softened slightly. He'll live. Julia let out a broken sigh. I lost my friend. And now, this. Kai rested a hand gently on her back as she cried. Quentin doesn't hate you, Julia. Betrayed, yes, but not hate. Now let's get you home. You need rest. He began walking her slowly through the quiet, empty world, his mind already spinning with another thought. I wonder if she'll be able to break the hex. She probably will. She's smart like that and resourceful. Still, the small satisfaction of having dealt Marina a dose of fear she'd never forget. It soothed something deep in his soul. For now. Read an advance of 10+ chapters and check out my new story Sukuna on ATG on my Patreon. Patreon.com/FredoZY. Chapter 31, Sponsor. The next morning, Kai sat cross-legged on Julia's couch, a heavy old book balanced on his knee. Its spine was cracked, and the Gemini seal on its weathered cover caught the soft light filtering through the blinds. He flipped through the pages carefully, one hand resting on a separate notebook filled with his own messy breakables notes. The incident with John had gnawed at him all night. A simple linking spell that should have worked and created a channel between the box and the vampire had turned a little volatile, resulting in a pile of smoking ash that had once been a living vampire. Something was seriously off. Foreign magical mixtures, he muttered to himself, reading a line from the book. Compatibility thresholds. Cross-magic interference. His eyes narrowed. Vampires in this world already possessed inherent magic, albeit passive, dormant unless triggered. But what he had become, and what he could now create, that was a whole different breed. The kind of vampire he was existed in a completely different magical spectrum, their energy more different, more adaptive, and that variance, that incompatibility between their nature and the foundational spells of this realm was what likely caused the combustion. He scribbled something down. When magical systems born of separate origins collide, their integration must be buffered by a stabilizing intermediary. He sighed. So a stabilizer is needed. He needed to find one. Or just make one. He turned another page, scanning diagrams and enchantment circles when he heard soft footsteps. He didn't look up. Hey, Julia's tired voice drifted from the hallway. She looked like she hadn't slept and her eyes shadowed with dark bags, her movements sluggish as she made her way to the kitchen. I made coffee, Kai said, still scheming the text in front of him. She gave a small nod of thanks, poured herself a cup with one hand, and leaned on the counter like the weight of her world was dragging her down. Kai finally closed the book with a sigh and shifted on the couch, making space for her. He patted the spot next to him. "Come sit." Julia hesitated for a second, then walked over and sank into the seat beside him, both hands wrapped around her mug like she was drawing strength from the warmth. "You okay?" he asked quietly. She shook her head. "I have half a mind to go find them and demand my share of that magic she got." Kai raised an eyebrow. "That's a bad idea." "I deserve it, Kai," Julia said bitterly. "Not just the ones I was promised, the new ones she stole. Because I helped her. And you think she'd just hand it over to you?" Julia glanced at him, but he continued. "People with power don't always uphold their end of the bargain. Especially not Marina. You do realize she helped you escape Breakbills not out of loyalty, but because she needed to save her own ass. And now that I've put the insanity hex in her, she's going to come looking for someone to bleed. You helped her, and that's all the leverage she'll need." He paused. "Well, I could have cast a cloaking spell on you to make you practically invisible to most detection methods. But let's keep that to ourselves, shall we? Besides, who knows what other tools they might have used to track you?" Julia stared at the floor. "It was my friend that she used, Kai." "Exactly," Kai replied, his tone softening. "That's what you should focus on. Forget Marina for now. Focus on your studies, on the lessons I'm giving you. There's more power in that than revenge." There was a long silence, and then she asked, almost in a whisper, "I hope he's okay." She turned and looked at him with those eyes that always seemed to reach straight into his chest and tug something loose. Kai met her gaze, then nodded gently. "He'll be fine." He reached into his notebook, tore out a page, and handed it to her. She blinked and took it. "What's this?" "Read it," he said. She looked it over, her brow furrowing slightly. "It's a healing spell," Kai explained. "Typically advanced. Used to recover from non-fatal wounds, depending on the user's proficiency. Speed, effectiveness all vary. For most, it takes years to master." He glanced at her arm, the faint scar shaped like crossed stars still visible. "But I've got no doubt you'll learn it quickly. You can start by healing that scar." Julia didn't speak for a moment. Her fingers clutched the page. Kai stood up, brushing off his jeans. "I gotta run. It's alumni week back at Breakbills." "Oh." She rose with him. "I thought you'd stay longer." He looked at her for a long beat. "Sorry," he said, voice soft. Julia gave a small nod and looked into his eyes again. Kai turned and headed for the door. As it closed behind him, he paused just outside. "Was I just imagining it?" He shook his head, then disappeared in a blur, vamp speed whisking him away into the waking city. Dash. Among the clusters of sponsors and alumni moving through the open space, Kai was seen holding a tall champagne glass. His sharp eyes scanned the crowd with a calm indifference as he casually walked through the sea of celebratory magicians. His outfit was sleek, his posture confident, definitely relaxed. He had just taken a sip when a familiar voice cut through the din. "It's like Camp David for magicians," Margot muttered to the group near the refreshments table, her glass swinging slightly in her hand. "Yeah," Elliot said dryly, standing beside her, "if Camp David was run by Caligula." Kai's ears perked, a wry smile touching his lips as his gaze finally settled on the group: Quentin, Alice, Margot, and Elliot standing in a semicircle. Quentin noticed him first. "Kai. Hey." Elliot turned as well, a smirk on his lips. "Look what the cat dragged in. Still alive, are we?" Margot tilted her head, taking in Kai's form before flashing her signature smirk. "Well, hello Tiger. What have you been up to since I was away?" Kai raised a brow, swirling the champagne in his glass. Oh, you know, just dove head first into someone's noggin, nearly got admitted into the psych ward, standard Tuesday. There was a pause, a chuckle from Elliot, a head shake from Quentin. Kai's eyes then shifted, finally landing on Alice. His expression softened slightly. Alice. How are you? She offered a polite smile. I'm fine, Kai. Thank you. Kai looked at Quentin briefly, then back at Alice, and nodded thoughtfully. I'm glad you're back with us. Elliot suddenly straightened and touched Margot's arm. Excuse us, he said quickly, pulling her away with an almost theatrical urgency. Now left in a growing bubble of awkwardness, Quentin shifted uncomfortably and rubbed the back of his neck. I feel really terrible about, everything. I just thought you wouldn't want to talk to us after, you know, the incident. Kai sipped his champagne, not offering a reply immediately. Internally, he was already thinking, God, this is awkward, why the hell am I here? Alice looked between them, then finally spoke, her voice quiet but steady. I don't blame either of you. You were trying to help. And the truth is, my brother died 5 years ago. I guess. I've just been pretending otherwise. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving a still silent Kai and a visibly guilt-stricken Quentin behind. Kai arched a brow and let out a dry breath before muttering, well, that wasn't emotionally suffocating at all. Quentin sighed. Have you talked to a sponsor yet? Kai smirked. Not really trying. I figure, if I stand around long enough, I'll attract one eventually. Like a cursed artifact. Quentin let out a scoff of amusement, shaking his head as Kai casually stepped away from the group and disappeared into the crowd, champagne glass still in hand. Read an advance of 10 plus chapters and check out my new story Sukuna on ATG on my Patreon. Patreon.com/FredoZY. Chapter 32, Etherphage. The library was near silent, the only sound the occasional flipping of pages turning or the soft creak of old wood beneath shifting weight of the students moving around. Kai sat in one of the corners, buried behind an uneven tower of thick, leather-bound books that looked like they hadn't been touched in, well, a while. Several books lay open in front of him, their scribbling texts scrawled in fading ink. Flipping between pages while his other hand scribbled occasional notes into his notebook. A look of mild frustration painted his face. He exhaled and muttered under his breath, nothing. Nothing useful again. He had already exhausted the grimoires he and his apart and books filled with rituals, incantations, and potion components sourced from the Vampire Diaries universe. But most of the ingredients mentioned were native to that plane, and things like vervain root-infused moonstone, werewolf venom mixed with dandelion ash, or the crushed bones of a Bennett witch. Okay, that one was kind of weird, and here? They were all useless. Even if I could find similar ingredients, the magic they were intended to regulate are entirely different. Back in the TVD world, magic was drawn from sacrifice, emotion, and channeling ancestral spirits or even celestial events. But here in the magician's universe, it was all wellsprings, discipline, and structured flow. It was like trying to patch a leak in a dam using a sponge meant for wine glasses. What I need, he muttered, eyes narrowing over the spine of an aged tome, is something that bridges the gap properly. Some kind of binding or stabilizing agent that works harmoniously to the components that needs to be binded. He turned the page slowly in a dark green book titled Woven Currents, Flow Theorems, and his eyes caught something. Runic binding magic, an ancient school of magic capable of fusing foreign magical signatures to an object or a host using arcane latticework. His brow lifted slightly. That was new. Kai leaned in, scanning the text line by line. The runes form a lattice structure that when applied correctly acts as a containment frame. The lattice doesn't restrict the flow entirely, but instead regulates and channels it back through the object or wielder in manageable waves. He paused, thinking. That sounded promising. But the primary contradiction, he read aloud in a quiet murmur, comes from incompatible origin magics. If the foreign magic possesses metaphysical polarity opposite the host's, which in this case being the wellspring magic, the binding will destabilize, potentially resulting in magical leakage, psychic backlash, or arcane corrosion of the runic structure. Kai groaned. Of course it does. He reached for another book underneath. This one was covered in dust and stitched with thread that looked like animal skin. It was titled Anime Codex, Symbiotic and Parasitic Magical Entities. His eyes skimmed the contents before one illustration stopped him, a leech-like creature, vaguely translucent, with glowing veins snaking through its slug-like body. The title above it read, Etherphage, a magically attuned parasitic organism capable of feeding on surplus magic and converting it into inert energy. Kai blinked. Hey! He read more, the etherphage, when bonded with a host or magical field, passively consumes unstable energy. If introduced into a chaotic magic stream, it will act as a stabilizing node. Dangerous in large numbers, but manageable in solitary deployment. Kai stared at the image a moment longer before he exhaled a laugh. Finally, this looks like it could work. He leaned back in his chair, holding the book open above his face. And here I was thinking I'd never find anything remotely helpful. Then, smirking slightly, he muttered sarcastically, now I just have to find a magical leech and convince it not to eat magic from my cute little minions. He closed the book with a sharp thud and rested his head against the back of the chair. His eyes drifted toward the ceiling. I probably need someone who actually knows about magical creatures and where to actually get this particular one. He said aloud. Which means... A groan escaped him as the inevitable realization landed. I'm gonna have to talk to a sponsor. He slumped in the chair dramatically, arms hanging limp, sighing as if the mere idea physically hurt him. Then, in a slow, begrudging movement, he sat up, running a hand down his face. Who else? He muttered, scanning through the possibilities in his mind. And then it hit him. He face-palmed, letting out a tired but amused exhale. Of course. A name and a face had snapped into his head, someone who just might have the knowledge he needed, or at least point him in the right direction. Kai stood up swiftly, tucking the etherphage book under his arm. As he walked out of the library, the thought struck him again. I wonder how far Julia's gotten with that spell I gave her. Kai strolled toward the cottage belonging to the physical kids with his books, his steps unhurried but his mind still occupied by the research he'd just done in the library and how to meet up with the professor who'd help him. As he neared the cottage, a familiar figure appeared with a small bag slung over her shoulder. Margot spotted him first, her eyes immediately locking on the book in his hand. Well, well. Doing a little light reading to impress the sponsors, she teased, arching a brow. Kai smirked. Just a little research. Nothing says fun like ending up with bugs. Ew, she said, scrunching her nose. She stepped closer into his personal space, her eyes glinting mischievously. Well, stay away from those. Bugs are gross. Her voice dipped a little lower, her tone playful. Although, for some reason, I am feeling butterflies inside of me. Kai glanced at her, cocking an eyebrow and smirked a little. If you want, I can help you feel something a whole lot more intense than butterflies. Margot giggled, then turned and sauntered toward the door, her hips swaying with exaggerated flair. Kai shook his head with a lopsided grin and followed her inside. Inside, they were met with the scent of baked goods and a sight both unexpected and oddly on-brand. Elliot, wearing a plush bathrobe, meticulously decorating cupcakes on the counter. Margot walked in and gasped. Ah, you baked. Kai. It looks yummy. Elliot inhaled dramatically. You can both have one if you think you can afford it. Margot scoffed. Please, I have the metabolism of a Jamaican sprinter. Kai folded his arms. I'm going to need something stronger than cupcakes to get to me. Margot leaned closer to the counter. Ah, do tell. Then she straightened and said, and I need my strength. She opened her handbag with a grin and pulled out a brown paper-wrapped bottle with a red sticker on it. So I can properly wrap this bottle of double-charmed sake. Kai tilted his head. Now this is definitely stronger stuff. Elliot glanced up with mock offense. Really, dude? Kai shrugged. I'm just saying. Margot smirked. You can only get it from a very particular monk on Okinawa. She held the bottle up. But I'm sure Genji is gonna love your little cakes. Elliot chuckled wryly as Margot grabbed a cupcake and walked off while eating it. This is war, bitch, he muttered after her with a mischievous grin. Then he turned to Kai. Wanna help crush the bitch? Kai sighed and waved the book. I'd love to, but I'm on a tight schedule. Elliot raised an eyebrow. On what? Kai had already started walking out. Research, he called over his shoulder. Read in advance of 10 plus chapters and check out my new story Sukuna on ATG on my Patreon. Patreon.com/FredoZY. Chapter 33, Chapter 33, Tension. The next thing we see is Kai standing outside Julia's apartment building. He took a breath, preparing for whatever mood she might be in after working on the spell and feeling depressed about Quentin. But the moment he entered the building and stepped inside, he heard a faint footstep and before he could even blink, he vamped into motion. There, standing awkwardly in front of Julia's door, was Pete, in a cheap, dry-clean suit. Without hesitation, Kai grabbed him by the throat and slammed him against the wall with a dull thud. Well hello, he said with a small laugh. We meet again. Pete started to struggle, his mouth trying to form words. Kai tilted his head, smiling. What did I say would happen the last time we met? Something about what would happen if Marina took things too far with Julia. Pete choked and gurgled, clawing at Kai's arm. Oh, sorry, Kai added mockingly. Forgot you can't really talk when you're being choked. He eased up just a little enough to let Pete wheeze. I came here, to check on her. Aeun, Kai replied, faux-touched. What a humanitarian. Then his expression darkened slightly. Or, were you just here to sniff around someone desperate enough for you to take advantage of? He leaned closer, a cruel smirk dancing on his lips. Come on, admit it. Just between us girls, you were actually here for a lick, weren't you? Pete paled visibly. Unless, of course, Kai continued, voice still playful, Marina sent you to find out what you can about me. There it was a flicker in Pete's eyes. Kai's smile sharpened. And how is she, by the way? The hallucinations started yet? Random outbursts? Sudden paranoia? I really thought the hex had some charm and would have done some damage by now, but then again she is tenacious and resourceful isn't she? Pete twisted, trying to escape. You're a psychopath. Kai scoffed. Oh, the irony. You see, I could have been a psychopath. Maybe even a sociopath. But if I were, believe me you'd already be dead and in the most painful way possible. Probably see if you can live without a spleen, which I'm sure you can, or maybe survive without your lungs. His grip tightened again. But anyways, back to Marina. Pete avoided his gaze. That alone told Kai enough. Unless, Kai mused, she's somehow found a workaround for the hex. That thought made his eyes narrow. Pete's hand began to form a subtle gesture magic. Kai caught it instantly. He grabbed Pete's hand and began siphoning the magic directly, before snapping one of his fingers. Pete let out a scream of pain just as Julia's door flung open. She stood there, stunned. What the fuck is going on here? Oh my god Kai, what the fuck are you doing? Kai glanced at her, then bashed Pete's head against the wall. The man crumpled to the ground, unconscious. Well, taking out the trash it would seem. Kai stared at Julia for a second, then glanced down at Pete's unconscious body lying flat on the floor. He tilted his head casually, then looked back at her. Excuse me, "Will you?" he said, flashing a crooked smile as he handed her his bag. Before she could even respond, Kai grabbed Pete by the leg and began dragging him across the room. Julia blinked. What the hell, Kai? People are going to see you." Kai looked over his shoulder with a smirk. "Are they?" he said slyly, and then muttered, "Invisic." Instantly, both Kai and Pete vanished from view. Julia stared at the now empty space, her eyes wide. After a beat, she exhaled with a small smile. "He's definitely gonna have to teach me that." Dash. A short while later, Kai returned. Julia was seated on the couch, arms crossed, waiting. "What did you do to him?" she asked, suspiciously. Kai shrugged with faux innocence. "Oh, nothing too dramatic. Just tossed him into a dumpster. Don't worry, I made sure it wasn't recycling day." He added with a chuckle, "I was tempted to put an invisibility spell on him too, but nah, that would have been too cruel. Imagine the rats never knowing what they're chewing on." Julia gave him a look somewhere between amused and horrified. His eyes wandered briefly and landed on a piece of paper sitting on the couch. She noticed. "All healed up," Julia said, raising her now unblemished hand. Kai nodded slightly. "Hey! Of course. You've learned it." He dropped himself onto the couch beside her, pulling a piece of paper and pen from his coat. He began scribbling quickly. Julia leaned closer. "What's that?" "Just a little something to keep the riffraff out," he muttered. Then he held it up and showed her. Written in Latinesque scrawl vis porta. "It's a doorway sealing spell," he said. "Locks and seals a room's entrance. Anyone not keyed into it can't even jiggle the handle." Julia's eyes lit up as she took the paper from him. She read it, then looked up at him with a smile. "You really know how to gift a lady," she teased. Kai smirked. "Glad you like it. Should keep the rats out of your apartment. Human or otherwise, meaning anyone with an affinity for magic." "Thank you," she said, her tone warmer now. There was a moment. That pause where the world seems to shrink. Julia stepped closer into his personal space, still holding the spell paper. Her eyes locked with his, then flicked down to his lips, then back to his eyes. Her breath caught slightly, just as his did. But then her phone rang. The tension shattered. She glanced down. I've gotta take this." Kai cleared his throat, blinking like he was waking from a trance. "Yeah. Sure. Sure." She moved a few steps away, raising the phone to her ear. Kai slumped slightly on the couch, muttering under his breath. "Fuck." Read an advance of 10+ chapters on my Patreon. Patreon.com/FredoZY. Chapter 34, Chapter 34, Half Solved. Kai stepped back into the physical kid's cottage after returning back from Julia's. James had called to let her know he'll be coming over. The door creaked as he entered, and the first thing he saw was Margot sitting on the front step with Quentin, both nursing drinks. Her eyes snapped to him, narrowed like a cat spotting a mouse. "Where the hell have you been, Kai? You missed the entire Welters game and the post-win debauchery," Margot said, tossing her curls back with attitude. Kai sucked in his teeth and shrugged. "Sorry. I've been, busy." Margot rolled her eyes dramatically. "Well, for your information, we won as expected, of course. Thanks to the boy genius here," she said, gesturing at Quentin with her drink. Kai looked at Quentin and smirked. "Did you cast a crippling social anxiety bomb on the other team? Must have worked like a charm." Quentin gave a soft chuckle despite himself. "Close enough." Just then, Elliot appeared, wine glass already half full. "Come, Margot, let's let the emotionally stunted brood in peace." As Elliot pulled Margot away by the hand, Kai dropped beside Quentin on the steps, eyeing the scattered remnants of celebration around them. "Confetti, glowing sigils still floating in the air, and a few drunken students passed out in odd corners. After a long pause, Kai turned to Quentin. "All right, what's with the look?" Quentin blinked. "What look? You look more depressed than usual, and that's saying something," Kai said, pointing at him with mock seriousness. Quentin glanced down at his hands. "My dad's dying." Kai's face blanked for a moment. "Oh." Then he winced mentally. "Oh fucking hell, I've been so busy, I actually forgot." The news had been mentioned in passing before, but it had completely slipped his mind in the chaos of everything else. "How is he?" Kai asked, softer this time. Quentin exhaled. "Glioblastoma. Brain tumor. It's aggressive, terminal. They say there's nothing to be done." He gave a hollow laugh, rubbing at his temples. "I've spoken to my sponsor. Looked through spells, rituals, ancient medical grimoires, and still nothing. I can literally do magic, Kai. We all can. But when it comes to the stuff that really matters..." Kai tilted his head slightly, staring off into the distance before replying, "Magic solves a lot: transmutation, teleportation, maybe resurrecting gods, and even creating pocket dimensions, one day, but some things, the real things, they're stubborn. Anchored. There are laws not even magic dares to break." He looked back at Quentin. "Even if there was a magical solution, it's probably buried under a destroyed civilization, scrawled in some forgotten dead language in a place you'd need a blood offering and 2 miracles just to enter." Quentin's voice cracked. "Why can't it just be easy? I mean, magic can literally reshape reality, and yet this. Something so human. So basic. And we're helpless." Kai sighed and got to his feet. "Because magic's an asshole, Q. It's flashy when it wants to be but silent when it counts, and the amount of magic needed to even pull something like this off is of the safety chart." He dusted off his jeans. "I'll catch you later." Without another word, he turned and headed for the old building, his mind not quiet, but focused. Dean Fogg's office was quiet as always. The heavy oaken door gave a slight groan as Kai knocked. "Come in," came Fogg's tired voice from within. Kai entered and stood tall, hands in the pockets of his coat. "Dean Fogg. I was hoping you could help me with a bit of research I've been working on." Fogg raised a brow over his glasses. "What kind of research?" Kai stepped forward. "I've been studying magical flow transfer. Specifically, how to siphon energy from one point to another without causing an overload. Right now, most of our techniques leave behind chaotic bursts, uncontrolled, unstable. I want to reduce that randomness. Stabilize it." Fogg folded his hands and studied Kai. "Go on." "I've come across a theoretical construct, something I've been calling the etherphage," Kai said. "A magically attuned parasitic organism that feeds on excess magic and converts it into inert energy." Fogg blinked slowly. "Ah, yes. The etherphage, nasty little creature. One of the few beings capable of metabolizing raw spell residue. Dangerous, though. If not contained, it doesn't just feed on overflow. It can start leeching from its host directly. In worst-case scenarios, a magician can lose their ability to cast entirely." Kai nodded. "I'm aware. But it's for a controlled study. A closed environment." Fogg leaned back. "Do you truly understand what you're playing with, Kai?" Kai met his gaze. "Yes. That's why I need it." There was a moment of silence before Fogg said, "You'll return tomorrow. 1 etherphage will be granted. No more." Kai's face remained composed. "That's fine." But as he turned and walked out of the office, his mind whispered otherwise. "That's definitely not fine, damn it, I need more." His face didn't betray it, but to him, the weight of his many problems felt half-solved. The air was crisp the next morning as Kai made his way across the campus, the weight of today's errand barely dulled by the soft rustle of leaves overhead. He wasn't 2 turns into the brick path when he caught sight of Penny, shoulders squared, storm cloud scowl in full force. Standing near the notice board with a crumpled paper in his hand. On it, a printed image of a young woman stared up in still silence. Kai slowed, narrowing his eyes. Ah, right. That third-year student who vanished. The one Penny found while astral projecting into that Philorian dungeon. The girl had been missing for months, the faculty had practically swept it under the rug, and her professor? A certified coward. Bound himself to Earth just so he wouldn't be forced to slip through dimensions with his class. Trouble in paradise. Kai muttered as he passed Penny. No response, just a clenched jaw and the sound of a paper tearing in half. Okay then. Underscore 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 // Read in advance of 10 plus chapters on my Patreon. Patreon.com/FredoZY. Chapter 35, Chapter 35 Eco-Friendly Monster Summoning. Kai walked farther off campus, following the directions Dean Fogg had given him. Eventually, he arrived at the outer gardens, an overgrown grove on the outskirts of Brakebills, where stone paths wound through thick hedges and vines coiled lazily over old sculptures. There, waiting under the shade of a twisting silverleaf tree, was Fogg. Beside him stood a familiar face, Professor Leland, the same man who'd helped Quentin when he was entangled in the Scarletti web and summoned the Materies from the underworld. Kai raised an eyebrow. Why the foliage? This where we grow magical leeches now? Fogg smirked slightly, adjusting his glasses. Because the spell we're about to cast involves summoning a magically reactive organism. If we did it on campus, we'd have to lower the wards, and frankly, I'm tired of fixing ward fractures every time a student gets ambitious. Leland chimed in dryly. Also, this grove is enchanted, so a controlled space. Any unstable magic gets absorbed by the root system. Call it Brakebills' magical compost bin. Kai chuckled under his breath. So, eco-friendly monster summoning. Got it. The ritual began. Professor Leland chanted in an ancient tongue while Fogg drew sigils into the sandy patch at their feet. The air thickened slightly, shimmered, and then, a mound in the dirt pulsed once, twice, before a sickly, veined slug-like creature wriggled to the surface. Its body glistened, faintly pulsing with residual magical energy, like it had just gorged itself at a ley line buffet. Before it could react, Leland snapped his fingers and cast a freezing hex. The ether phage went rigid mid-crawl. Fogg stepped forward, producing a crystal containment orb and gently guiding the creature inside. A hiss escaped the sphere as the warded seal locked in place. Turning to Kai, Fogg held it out. I sincerely hope you know what you're doing, Kai. Kai took it, peering into the orb. Oh, don't worry. I do. Fogg sighed. Another year, another student attempting the impossible. I swear, if this thing ends up devouring half the hedge maze, I'm blaming you. How long does it stay alive in here? Kai asked, walking beside Fogg as they headed back toward the main building. Indefinitely, Fogg replied. As long as the seal holds and no one taps the glass like an idiot. They arrived back at the school just as Professor Pearl stood waiting near the administrative hall with Elliot and Quentin. Quentin stood awkwardly beside her, hands in his pockets, his face slightly pink. I told you not to bring up the puppy thing in front of him, Pearl hissed to Elliot. Kai arched a brow. Cancer puppy? Wow. Q, how'd you end up in the pet-killing business? Quentin rubbed the back of his neck. I had to try something. It wasn't easy. Just then, Fogg called Quentin inside, leaving Kai outside by the steps. He exhaled slowly, staring at the ether phage in his hand, before pulling out his phone. It buzzed. Julia. He picked up. Hey. They erased his memories, Julia said in a panicked tone, no greeting. Kai blinked. Wait, James. Yes. James. Kai closed his eyes for a second, teeth gritting lightly. How do I keep missing these things? He'd been too busy. Between tracking magical anomalies, hunting spells with Julia, navigating whatever the hell was happening at Breakbills, and now dealing with this parasitic energy sponge. I'll be there, Kai finally said, a sigh leaking out with the words. Just, give me a minute. Dash. The warehouse was a mess and sound of flesh hitting against flesh filtered through the air as Kai stepped inside. The moment he entered, his eyes narrowed at the scene unfolding before him. Tom and Devon locked in a brutal fist fight, circling each other like wolves while the others Larry, Travis, Julius, and Michael all stood around watching as if it were some underground sport. A pile of blood bags he had brought back for them sat in the corner like a trophy. Kai's frown deepened. The moment the fighters noticed his presence, they froze mid-motion. Silence settled like dust. Kai glanced from the fighters to the amused onlookers, then back to the blood bags. Are you betting now? He asked flatly. Larry spoke up. There's not much else to do. Figured we'd die of boredom, so might as well enjoy the view before the grave. Kai's brow arched. Suicidal logic. Can't even argue with that. He shrugged, pulling out a containment orbit's surface faintly glowing. Well, if you're not dead yet, feel free to celebrate. I've found a way around the whole ash to ash, burn down your host issue. The crystal shimmered as the creature inside moved. A slug-like parasite floated inside, its darkened body lined with pulsing veins, slow and hypnotic. Michael took a wary step back. What the fuck is that? Kai grinned dryly. A parasitic solution to a parasitic problem. Without another word, he tossed the orb toward Larry, who caught it reflexively, the container cool but faintly vibrating. Kai pointed lazily. Keep that thing somewhere none of you cavemen can damage it. Please. He turned to leave, but paused by the door. Oh, and my bet's on Tom. Devon groaned audibly. Kai's smirk widened as he vanished in a blur of speed. Dash. Back to Julia's apartment. When Kai stepped inside, his light footsteps froze the moment he saw her. Julia was curled on the couch, a tissue crumpled in one hand, her face streaked with tears. Instantly, all the humor left Kai's face. His expression hardened into something cold, sharp. I'll kill them, he said without hesitation. Julia reached up quickly, grabbing his arm with both hands and shaking her head silently. Marina, he said grimly. It's her, isn't it? Julia nodded, her voice barely audible. James didn't deserve this. Kai paced once before kneeling in front of her, eye level now. This is her getting even for the hex, and for you defying her. And James was the closest one she could reach. Julia nodded again, tears returning. She took everything from him, Kai. His memories, us, me. He didn't even recognize me. Kai gently reached for her hand. I can try reversing it. Maybe I can extract what was suppressed. No, Julia interrupted quietly. Kai blinked. Excuse me. No, she repeated, firmer this time, voice low but steady. This might be for the best. Kai stared at her like she'd just grown a second head. You're losing me here. I've been keeping things from him, Julia said slowly, the words tasting like ash. The magic, the late-night runaway, and I told him I was using Kai. I lied to him on several occasions and he didn't deserve that. He doesn't even know who I am anymore. I've dragged him into this world without him ever having a say, and now? Now maybe this is a chance for him to have a clean slate. Kai's eyes narrowed, but he didn't speak. He watched her, listened. I couldn't live with myself, Julia continued, voice cracking, if I kept hiding this. If I kept pulling him into something that could get him killed. There was a long pause. Finally, Kai sat back down beside her. He didn't argue. He didn't push. Can you just stay for a while? she asked softly, eyes rimmed with red. Kai gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Yet. Sure. He pulled her closer, letting her rest her head against his shoulder. After a while, he murmured, "How's progress with the doorway sealing spell, magic genius?" Julia chuckled, voice raspier now. "Almost there." "Almost." A comfortable silence fell between them, the kind that didn't need filling. Then Julia whispered, almost to herself, "Why couldn't it all just go right?" Kai sighed. "Because having magic doesn't make things easier. If anything, it just makes life more complicated. More dangerous. More." He trailed off, searching for the word. "More real." Julia nodded silently, her breath finally slowing. Read in advance of 10+ chapters on my Patreon. Patreon.com/FredoZY. Chapter 36, Chapter 36, Be careful what you wish for. After leaving Julia's apartment, Kai was heading back to Breakbulls when a thought crossed his mind. He turned sharply and vamp-speeded across town toward a location he'd scouted earlier, one of the hedge witch hideouts, disguised as an old record store. From a rooftop across the street, he observed the store. The sign read closed, but he could hear multiple heartbeats inside and underground. One person was at the counter. Kai tilted his head, considering the irony of hiding chaos behind vintage vinyl. A little poetic. He scanned the area for somewhere to change into something less noticeable, then changed his mind. He cast Invisic, vanishing from sight, shimmering subtly with every step as he strolled casually toward the shop. He circled the building, noting the thickness of the wards. "Sturdy enough," he muttered. Back at the front, he bent down, picked up a few pebbles, rolled them in his hand, then smiled. "Destructive glass Stoffenfala. Destructive glass Stoffenfala." He then flicked the pebbles forward after casting the reinforced boundary destruction spell, a spell that utilized raw magical power to break through or reverse a complex imprisoning spell placed on a building. And in this case it's the wards. Inside the shop, the guy behind the counter frowned as the ground vibrated. A low tremor shook the vinyl shelves. Discs began to fall. He looked up just as the air shimmered at the storefront. "Oh shit!" The glass exploded. The blast sent him flying backward into the racks. Groaning, he looked up only to find a pair of Jordan 1s planted firmly in front of his face. As his eyes trailed upward, he locked eyes with the boy who had hexed his boss. "Well, hello," Kai said with a half-smile. "What are you doing down there, champ?" The guy raised his hand to cast, but Kai vamp sped, grabbing his throat and slamming him hard against the wall. His voice dropped, calm but deadly. "Try anything, and I'll rip your throat out. Do you understand me?" The guy nodded quickly. "Good," Kai said, voice polite now. "Where's the entrance?" The guy's eyes darted to the right. Kai followed the gaze. Downstairs, Marina and a small group were busy. An Asian guy carried a bowl filled with glowing green liquid and a rope soaked in something unidentifiable. He turned toward the ritual area as another guy knocked over a stack of books. "Where the fuck is Pete?" Marina snapped. "He's not back yet," said the black guy with dreads. Before she could respond, the ground rumbled. The Asian guy's voice trembled. "What the fuck is that?" Marina's eyes widened. "That's the wards." A second later, the upstairs door burst open. Kai walked in. Marina's jaw clenched. "You?" Kai offered a small wave. "Good evening, Marina, I trust you have been well, ... He strolled in, eyes scanning the room. His gaze landed on her hand, which was as expected smooth, clean, no trace of the hex rash. "I see you've found your way around my little spell," he said. She scoffed. "Wasn't easy." Kai stepped closer. "I wonder, though, how did you manage it? Did you simply find someone else to dump it on, or are you just that good?" As he got nearer, the Asian guy lunged forward, casting. Kai flicked his wrist. The guy flew back, smashing into the wall, his thigh impaled on a mounted horn. He screamed, "Arg!" Kai snapped his fingers and silenced the man. The man slumped, unconscious. The black guy with dreads shouted and began casting. Kai turned and wordlessly cast a maim spell. Both the man's legs cracked and folded under him as he collapsed, howling. Kai kept his eyes on Marina, who slowly backed away. "You're very resourceful," he said, voice low. Her breath caught. He stroked her cheek, then grabbed her neck, pulling her so close he could feel her breath. "But I'm not here for that," he whispered. "You stole something from a friend of mine. How do I reverse it?" Marina smiled, then laughed. "You can't," she said. Kai frowned. "And you think this is funny?" "A little, yeah," she said. "Julia's toy?" His memories weren't repressed. "I removed every part of his mind that remembered you all, and then I destroyed them." Kai exhaled through his nose, disappointed. He was hoping it was a suppression spell, something reversible, or absorb the magic that was casted on him. But this? Gone. Burned from James's mind forever. Marina moved herself closer now, voice soft. "Kai, you're wasted at breakbills. Join me. Imagine what you could do, what we could do together." She reached up, ran her tongue along his lips, her blue eyes locked onto his, one hand sliding low toward his groin. "Oh Marina!" Kai said quietly, a grin playing on his lips. "The fun we could have had, if only you didn't hide behind deception." "What?" she began, confused. Kai snapped her neck in a flash. Everyone in the room froze. You killed her?" someone whispered. Kai turned, casually walking to the door. "Not exactly," he said. "That's just a golem." He paused at the threshold. "You were just bait. Your real boss, well, I think she's far from where I can reach her." He vamped out. Back at Breakbills, in the physical kid's cottage, the first thing Kai heard was Quentin's voice. "You were in Fury." He was holding a book in front of Penny with two ram symbols facing each other. "You were in Fury," Quentin repeated. "Stop," Penny groaned. "Fury's just a... Did you see animals? Did they talk to you?" Q asked, eyes lighting up. Kai rolled his eyes and muttered under his breath. "Is he really doing that?" "So," Penny finally astral projected to Fury. "I was in some dungeon," Penny snapped. "You hobbit-loving freak! What's wrong with you?" Kai finally stepped into the room. "Geez, guys! What's with all the commotion?" Caddy turned. Apparently, Penny teleported to Fury. Kai dropped onto the couch. "Wait, seriously?" Quentin nodded. "Yes. And there are no hobbits in Fury, but that's not the point. The crest." He pointed to the drawing. "This means he was in a castle built by Philorian dwarves." Penny groaned. "Kill me. Careful what you wish for," Kai muttered. Quentin pushed on. "That place is filled with incredibly magical artifacts." Kai raised a brow. "Incredible like, good incredible, or oops, we all died incredible?" "Exactly," Penny muttered. "Because yeah, the beast is super magical. Maybe he does birthday parties too." Quentin froze. "Wait, the beast is in Fury." "This was a waste of time," Penny grumbled. Kai blinked, thinking. Yup. Probably soaking in the wellspring. Alice finally spoke. "I think you should listen to Quentin. You didn't travel there by choice, did you?" Kai leaned forward. "So, you don't know how to control it yet?" "Nope," Penny grunted. "Next time you could land somewhere worse than the beast," Kai said. "You know, like some psychotic plane crawling with skin-hungry shadows." Alice nodded. "Then educate yourself." Nobody knows Fiery better than Quentin. What if you get sent back? Caddy looked at Penny. She makes a point. Penny sighed. All right, fanboy. Tell me what the books say about not getting my face eaten. Kai scoffed. What? Penny snapped. I don't think you'll have much luck on that front. Quentin agreed. The beast's not in the books. Then how'd I see him? Penny barked. I looked him in the face. The Chatwins mostly got chased by this witch, Quentin explained. The Watcher woman. Kai groaned. Yeah, that's helpful. She plants clocks in trees, Quentin added. Okay, Caddy said, deadpan. I take it back. This is a waste of time. Quentin snapped. The books are for kids. Maybe they left out the part about the eye-ripping monster, I don't know. Okay, we're done here, Penny said. You love Fiery? I hope you get to go. I really do. Kai stood. Be careful what you wish for, it might come true faster than you think. He left the room as well, Alice moving to console a frustrated Quentin. Read an advance of 10 plus chapters on my Patreon. Patreon.com/FredoZY. Chapter 37, Chapter 37, Magical High. The trouble with mixing magic and curiosity is that eventually, one tries to swallow the other. Kai stepped back into his dorm with a faint sigh, his mind still replaying the bizarre events from earlier that day. The second the door closed behind him, he noticed Leo hunched over a circle drawn with chalk and runes on the floor, mumbling incantations under his breath with a candle flickering beside him. A faint haze clung to the air like incense. Kai plopped face first onto his bed and groaned. Dare I ask what new form of insanity you're working on this time? Leo didn't even flinch. Seance. Or, well, something like it. Some final year students said it's a shortcut to euphoria. Apparently, the spell causes a delirious effect which puts you in a state of half bliss, half dead. A spiritual high. Kai turned his head on the pillow to squint at him. So, you're trying to talk to ghosts and get high at the same time? Peak multitasking. Leo grinned and shrugged. You gotta admit, that's some bold multitasking. But Kai was already half listening. He reached beneath his bed and pulled out a thick leather-bound book. Leo took notice of it and was sure it was one he was certain hadn't been on Breakbull's standard curriculum. The cover bore no title, but its weight and aura definitely spoke volumes, plus it looked weirdly old. Still, for some reason, he never questioned it. It felt right. I need something in my stomach before I try decoding witch LSD rituals, he muttered, tossing the incense he was holding onto his mattress before heading out. With Leo gone, Kai was able to focus on the task at hand. Back in the room a while later, Kai settled cross-legged on his bed with the grimoire in hand. He opened his notebook and began scribbling. Spirit harnessing spell. A spell typically used by witches with massive power reserves, invoking spirits to focus their magic through them. The spell is usually performed at a site of mass witch death. The spirits, if willing, grant the witch amplified abilities and if terms are agreed upon. Kai scribbled a note in the margin. But in our case, replace spirit with magic source. Like a generator. No need for violent graveyards when we've got the Niffin box. He glanced at the small wooden box on his bed beside him under an invisic spell. The box actually looked so ordinary to most people who'd look at it, but for a magician, especially a siphoner who was more sensitive to magic, he could feel the pulsating hum within it radiated raw magical energy. Who needs ghost juice when you've got a portable nuke, he quipped aloud. The book listed an incantation. Esse vas est cure est vos facultas. Kai frowned and muttered, yeah, no. Needs tweaking. Make it about magical flow, not possession. He then began adjusting the phrasing, refining the spell structure to harness raw magic through the Niffin without inviting spectral contracts. Turning the page, he found a section that caught his eye. Metamorphosis spell. An extremely rare and uniquely powerful biological magic. At its peak, allows full transmogrification. Requires equivalent magical power. The most advanced biologically influenced spell known. Kai scoffed, yet. That I have in spades. He quickly jotted in his notes. Use the metamorphosis spell as the framework to re-engineer the ether phage for symbiosis rather than parasitism. Think magical parasite with benefits. Host must be willing or enchanted into acceptance. Maybe fold it into spell weave as an ingredient. He flipped to a different section, pacing now as he cycled through several books from the Breakbulls library. Titles ranged from runic blood theory to magics of instinct and intention. He dropped one on the floor in frustration. There's gotta be a way to stabilize this without over-engineering it. And then it clicked. He smacked his forehead. Of course. I'm out here reinventing spellcraft when I could have just used a linking spell. He opened a new page in his notes and began feverishly writing. Linking spell. A binding spell that links individuals, objects, or energies. Commonly used between living beings, witch to witch, vampire to human. Injury, pain, or death to one affects all connected. Adjust to merge spell components, ether phage which will be the control agent, magical current from the box and containment structure which shall be the spell itself. Must install a stability enchantment. Link into singular weave, not chain. Simple, elegant, painful if botched of course and perfect. He grinned, proud of the sudden breakthrough. Hell, I should start teaching classes. He paused as a thought returned to him. One of the books in the Breakbulls archive had hinted at it that all magic, no matter how foreign, shares at least one common trait. A thread. He sat back, staring at his notes spread across the bed like pieces of a chaotic puzzle finally forming a picture. Well then, this had better work out. I don't think Foggy would be generous enough to give me another ether phage. Just then, Leo returned, holding a small plate of cookies, grinning like a child with a secret. Want one? He asked. Kai raised a brow. I'm not exactly in the mood for carbs. Leo chuckled and held one up insistently. Kman, it's my mom's recipe. She used to bake these every weekend before she passed. I promise no ghost seances involved. Kai rolled his eyes, but relented. Fine. What's the worst that could happen? He took a bite. Then a second. His eyes widened. Holy fuck, this is good. Told you. Magical, right? Leo beamed. Kai grabbed another, barely chewing before reaching for a third. These are laced with crack, aren't they? Leo said nothing. As Kai moved to return one of the specific books from his bed, his vision swam. The air felt heavy, like it was folding in on itself. He reached out but the book seemed distant. What the fuck, he muttered, blinking. A wave of warmth and dizziness swept over him. His muscles relaxed too much. His heartbeat slowed just enough for him to notice. I'm fucking high, dot. A magical high if it can affect me to this point. And I just kept on eating the goddamn cookies. He turned to Leo, whose face looked faintly guilty as he said something Kai could barely make out. Sorry, Kai. Margot. Margot put me up to it. The last thought that crossed his mind before the floor tilted and the darkness took him was. Well fuck me. Margot. Read in advance of 10 plus chapters on my Patreon. Patreon.com/FredoZY. Chapter 38, Chapter 38 Kobayashi Maru-D. The first thing Kai registered upon waking was the sound of multiple heartbeats around him. His senses sharpened instantly as he shot up from the ground, clarity returning with alarming speed. His mind immediately clicked into alert mode. Where the fuck am I? Standing up fully, his eyes landed on the back of a hooded figure, seated and still. But the moment they heard him rise, the figure stirred. The hood was pulled back, the mask removed revealing none other than Margot herself. What the fuck? It's only been 6 minutes. You should be down for at least another half hour, she said, clearly annoyed but also amused. Kai narrowed his eyes. Margot, what the fuck is this? And why are you dressed like that? It took a few seconds, but then it hit him. He groaned internally. Ah, right. Trials. Shit. I don't have time for this nonsense. Without saying another word, he followed her through the woods until they emerged into a clearing. A number of students were already standing in a loose circle. Hooded figures removed their masks one by one. Among them was Elliot, who immediately launched into a pompous explanation. It is up to the upper class, Elliot began dramatically, to administer what is known as the trials. Kai tuned him out immediately, eyes drifting across the group until he spotted Quentin, Alice, Caddy, and Penny each looking irritated as hell. He sighed internally. Honestly, who wouldn't be? Roped into magical hazing nonsense before coffee? Delightful. But alas, I'm still a bloody student. Elliot was still talking as he walked between them all, monologuing about how only the worthy would survive, and how failing meant flunking out. A test to thin the herd. When he reached Kai, he added with a smug twist of tone, and I'm sure some of you will definitely survive. Kai rolled his eyes. Oh, nut up. This isn't Harvard. This requires actual effort. He turned to the others. And don't even think about complaining to the faculty they're off on some luxurious retreat, supposedly watching from a distance. How convenient, Kai thought. But there's no way none of the supervisors are around. Not fully buying that. He tuned Elliot out again, his mind shifting gears. The sooner I get through this, the sooner I can have my army. Oh, what the hell, let's do this, shall we? Dash. Moments later, Kai stood behind Alice as Margot lounged nearby, having way too much fun annoying her. I'm merely keeping a little eye on every single one of you, Margot said dramatically, then turned and locked eyes with Kai. Ah! There you are! Kai rolled his eyes as she handed him a placard. Report to your table. And good luck, she said, smirking. Oh, and well, did you like my little gift? Kai raised an eyebrow. Is this how you treat all your guys? She smirked wider. Well, hot steamy sex is involved once in a while. Kai quipped back, would love to find out if that's true. With a wink, she handed him the placard. Rawr, tiger. Now get to your table. You demonic little minx, Kai thought with a smirk and walked off. Dash. He arrived at a table already occupied by Quentin, Penny, and another guy who clearly grated his nerves. The guy was in the middle of saying something ridiculous. It's a spine-covered goat-sucking primate indigenous to Mexico. I can already see we are immensely handicapped by your presence. Kai sat down, smirking. That's cute. Tell me, did you Google how to sound like an insufferable tool before coming here, or is that just natural talent? Penny burst into laughter. Quentin tried to stifle a snort. The guy glared. Fuck you, dude. Kai leaned back casually. It's funny how people like to run their mouths but can't take it when it's returned. Elliot resumed his commentary, now going on about something obscure from the 18th century. Kai wasn't listening anymore. His mind drifted. Julia should have gotten the boundary spell down by now. It's not perfect, but it's something. At least there's that layer of protection against Marina. I really need to deal with her soon. FYI, Elliot declared suddenly, this is practically impossible. Kai's focus returned. That'd be true, if the person assigned this test wasn't expected to cheat. They were seated before a table covered in magical paperwork and an hourglass ticking ominously. He sighed. Everyone around him was stressing out, trying to make sense of the multipoint abstract index magic test. Kai simply put his head down on the table. Quentin looked over. Kai? This is kinda an all-hands-on-deck situation. Penny added, yet. Hate to agree with the chupacabra, but he's right. Kai murmured lazily, wake me up tomorrow once you've actually discovered a new branch of magic and solved it. And with that, he fell asleep. The next morning, Kai awoke slowly but didn't move, just listened. The annoying guy said, "We're screwed." Kai thought, "Nope. You're screwed for not being part of the main cast." "How much time do we have left?" the guy asked. Quentin replied, I don't know how to read an hourglass. This is impossible." He paused. Even Elliot said it was impossible. Then repeated, "Wait, it's impossible." Penny added, "Actually," he said, "practically impossible. But maybe some genius can do this." Kai thought, there we go. Warmer. Quentin leaned back, eyes narrowing. "So, what geniuses can be magicians?" Kai sat up suddenly. "Welcome to the Kobayashi Maru, folks." The guy blinked. "What?" Kai clarified dryly, "It's a no-win scenario. They want us to cheat." Quentin nodded. "Kai's right. We've been Kobayashi Maru-d." Penny grinned. "Whatever that means, yes." The other guy freaked. "No. No way." Kai rolled his eyes. "God, unintelligent people exhaust me." Penny snapped, "You're an idiot. We're cheating." "Why would they want us to cheat?" the guy asked. Kai smirked. "Because we're magicians. We literally have the cheat code to reality itself. In short, we're cheaters." Quentin added diplomatically, "I wouldn't put it that way, but he's not wrong." He turned to Penny. "Supply closet. 5 minutes. I have a plan." For the first time, Penny looked mildly proud of Quentin. Kai smiled. He's growing up." Then turned to the other guy. "You, on the other hand." They executed the plan perfectly. Quentin distracted, Kai set the table, and Penny astral projected peeking at Alice's work and copying the answers. Kai laughed internally. "God, this is fun." Moments later, Elliot appeared. He looked at their work, analyzing everything. Kai muttered, No, take your time. Take it asterisk. All in, Professor Elliot." Penny growled, "Just light the fucking thing." Elliot eventually did. The bowl ignited. "Well done. Too bad I know you cheated," he said, eyes lingering. For a brief second, Kai raised an eyebrow, expecting fallout. Instead, "Congratulations, you three. On to the next trial." Penny frowned. "Wait. What about?" They turned to the last guy, only to find he had completely vanished. Kai smirked. "Guess the goat-sucking encyclopedia finally got sucked himself. One trial down. Let's see how long the rest last." Read an advance of 10+ chapters on my Patreon. Patreon.com/FredoZY. Chapter 39, Chapter 39, Ritual. The moment the first test ended, Kai didn't waste a second. Without speaking to anyone, he returned to his dorm, grabbed the notebook he had scrawled dozens of untested theories into, snatched the sealed Niffin box from beneath his bed, and vanished from the school grounds. The cool breeze of New York brushed against his face as he walked quickly through a side alley, pulling out his phone. "Hey you," Julia answered casually, the background noise indicating she was walking somewhere busy. "Hello, genius," Kai replied with a half-smile as he ducked under a canopy near an old bookstore. A woman passed with her dog, the leash taut and the dog barking at a nearby fire hydrant. "How are you doing?" "I'm okay," she answered, "just running an errand." "You just left the school?" "Needed air," Kai replied. "Have you mastered the boundary spell?" "Almost. It's taking longer than I expected. The theory's sound, but the stabilization is a bit off." She paused. "Hey, Kai. Yeah. I met someone, she said hesitantly. A woman. She said she knew Marina. Told me she had a way to get more spells. She seemed off. Kai froze. A slow exhale escaped his lips as he glanced at the woman with the dog. That should be Katie's mom, he muttered under his breath. What? Julia asked. You there? Listen to me, he said, now serious. Whatever she told you, whatever she's offering, don't go near her. Stay away. Julia's voice became sharp. Wait, do you know her? Kai hesitated before saying, she's probably Katie's mother. Julia blinked, then laughed over the phone in disbelief. Holy shit! I did not see that coming. Him. So why the hell is she trying to get to me? Why offer me more spells? What's her angle? I don't know, Kai said honestly. But whatever she's doing, it's not safe. Please, Julia. I mean it. Don't do anything reckless with her. A pause. Julia. Okay, she finally said. I got a couple spells from her. That's all. Nothing huge. Be careful, Kai stressed. I will. You coming back? Soon. But right now, I've got something to handle. All right. Talk later, Julia said before hanging up. Kai stared at his phone, thoughts drifting to the way things had played out in the original timeline with Katie's mom bleeding out. Kai's warehouse. The large sliding doors creaked open. Kai stepped into the dull interior of his warehouse/lab. The silence was unnerving. To most, it would seem quiet. But to Kai, who could feel subtle vibrations of magic in the air as well as hear multiple heartbeats, it was anything but. In a flash, he sped from his position just as Tom and Julius appeared in a blur of motion where he once stood. They barely had time to process before Kai was behind them and both his arms plunged cleanly through their backs, each hand gripping a still beating heart. Well, I'd call this a heartbreaking reunion, he said dryly. Tom and Julius both groaned, pain evident in their expressions. Kai's eyes glowed faintly as the veins began to show and his fangs came out as he leaned in between them, tone now edged in steel. What is this? A surprise party? Because while I don't hate the welcome, this really isn't how I imagined it. Julius coughed. Wanted to, see if we could surprise you. Kai smiled tightly. Are you sure? And not just letting the power go to your tiny little heads? Maybe thinking you could take me. His fingers tightened, squeezing down on their hearts just enough for them to gasp. Let me be clear, Kai said coldly. I brought you into this world. I can so easily pluck you out of it. He whispered the last part in their ears before pulling out his now bloodied hands. The two crumpled to the floor, groaning but alive. Kai walked past them, wiping his hands off with a cloth, toward a steel table where the notebook and the Niffin box lay. Well, he said, voice lighter, I've got good news. Devon looked up. What is it, boss? Kai grinned. I may have finally cracked the upgrade issue. He tapped the Niffin box. Without the spontaneous combustion problems. Everyone froze. Don't look so pale, Kai said, grinning. Put a smile on. This is progress. Larry, ever the cautious one, asked, what's the success rate? Kai's smile widened. 50/50. Michael blinked. Wait. 50/50. Kai nodded enthusiastically. Yup. A solid coin toss. Heads, evolution. Tails, barbecue. Travis muttered, we're so dead. Kai laughed. He's funny. I like him. Midnight. The warehouse now looked like the site of a pagan ritual. The floor had been swept clean, and a spell circle pulsed with magical energy. The circle was a complex one with a large outer ring etched in burned salt mixed with powdered bone. Yeah, the bone was gotten from the hospital he got his blood bags from. Inside it, 3 interlocking pentagrams, each touching a different directional node, north, east, south, and west. Intersecting triangles and linking sigils created a layered effect, forming a geometric web. Thin grooves channeled magical flow to key anchor points. Each point held an object, with the north holding the Niffin box, which was the main component, sat there complete still and looking like an box. East held a black iron bowl filled with human blood. South held the sealed glass container containing the etherphage, the magical leech. West held the blood of their maker, a smear of Kai's own blood, freshly cut. Kai stood at the edge, admiring the circle. "Well then," he muttered. "Who's first?" Tom, surprisingly, stepped forward. Kai raised a brow. "How brave! Guess you didn't want sloppy seconds this time, hey?" The others frowned. Tom lay within the circle. Kai cracked his knuckles and stepped into position. "You ready?" Tom nodded. Kai extended his arms and began the chant, weaving the Latin incantation he'd pieced together. Coniunctio animi et flammi. Fluxus magici, const ring et solidifica. Corpus muta, sed mens permanit. Vinculum fiat per sanguinem et umbram. Nexum fiat, nunc. Union of soul and flame. Flow of magic, bind and stabilize. Transform the body, but let the mind remain. Let the bond be forged by blood and shadow. Let the link be made now." The Niffin box suddenly shone with radiant blue light, and the energy began channeling down the spell lines into the bowl of blood. The etherphage wriggled violently in its container, reacting to the spell. Then, it started to dissolve its body, breaking down into luminous blue flakes, like snow, drifting slowly into the bowl of blood. The circle glowed brighter, the entire warehouse bathed in a surreal light. The incantation grew faster, Kai's voice rising. The warehouse trembled. Outside, the winds howled, spiraling violently around the building. Suddenly, everything stopped. Silence. Stillness. Read an advance of 10+ chapters on my Patreon. Patreon.com/FredoZY. Chapter 40, Success. Kai's chest rose and fell as he looked down into the circle, eyes wide. "Well," he said with a grin. "That's either the best thing I've ever done, or someone's about to explode." The room was tense the moment Kai said those words. The vampires looked at each other, unease etched on their undead faces. Julius, ever the one to break a heavy silence, stepped forward and asked, "What's going on, boss?" Kai didn't answer immediately. He walked to the bowl in the center of the warehouse, now radiating a low, pulsing blue glow. It shimmered with power like the calm center of a brewing storm. Tom looked between the bowl and Kai and asked, "I don't feel anything. Am I not supposed to feel a change or?" "Oh, don't worry," Kai replied, his tone light and playful in a way that made the others more nervous than reassured. "The real experiment is just about to begin. You were only a piece of the spell component." Some time later, a small glass cup was placed before Tom. It was filled with a portion of the glowing blood from the bowl. Kai motioned to it with a grin. "Bon appétit." Tom hesitated, his hands trembling slightly as he picked up the cup. He looked at the others, Julius, Michael, Travis, Larry, all staring at him with tense expressions. Then he turned back to the cup, took a breath, shut his eyes, and drank it in one long gulp. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then Tom screamed. "Ah!" He fell to the floor, writhing violently. His veins began to glow a sharp, unnatural blue beneath his skin, pulsing with every beat as though something was rewriting him from the inside out. It went on for 3 minutes to 10 and from that to 15 and finally nearly half an hour of screaming, spasms, light bursting under his skin. "Is he dead?" Travis asked, voice shaky. Larry crouched near him. No, I don't think so. Look, he's still breathing. Michael, pacing, snapped, then why the hell isn't he moving? Everyone shut up, Kai said, stepping forward and crouching. The moment he did, Tom groaned and then pushed himself to his knees. His eyes opened. His irises now held a light blue glow, veins dark and raised beneath his eyes, fangs out. His breathing was erratic but steady. Kai's eyes lit up with excitement. Well, 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 he muttered, a slow smile forming on his lips. Now that's a good sign. He turned to the rest. So then who's next? The sarcasm in his voice was unmistakable as he said, come now, don't be shy. You want magic, don't you? Et voila, a vampire with wellspring magic. It'll only hurts a little. One by one, they drank. One by one, they endured the pain. 3 hours later, all 5 vampires had the same glow in their eyes. The blood in the bowl had nearly run dry, but it didn't matter. Kai had what he needed. Soldiers. Weapons. Success. Looking over them, Kai said something about how even John lost to their cause would have been proud. Julius, always the one to ask, finally spoke again. What now? Kai turned with a smile. Now? Now we do magic. 2 days later, same warehouse. The warehouse had become something resembling a classroom, or at least Kai's twisted version of one. The 5 vampires, were now a little bit more attuned to wellspring magic, were seated or standing across the space, learning from Kai directly. He called it Magic Basics for Dummies, and so far, they were adapting well. He ran them through the fundamentals, telekinetic spells, fire spells, simple aneurysm hexes, oh yeah, fancy that last one. Each vampire had a natural affinity for certain spells, but all of them had one thing in common, which is their vampiric side kept them from breaking down under the strain of magical overuse. The same overnights would turn magicians to niffins. The stabilizing agent had worked flawlessly. There were no tremors or breaking down and no spontaneous combustion as well. So far, Kai monitored their magic capacity closely. It turned out the vampire condition provided a buffer that most humans lacked. A spell that would leave a human unconscious barely fazed them. Kai leaned back, arms crossed as he watched Larry levitate a wrench and spin it mid-air. Bare functional as they didn't have the talent, but they were progressing. But then he froze. Oh, shit, the trials. He shot to his feet and moved to the front of the warehouse. All right, he called out. Take a break. Blood bags are still in the cooler. You can now walk around if you want, just don't do anything stupid. He looked back at them. You'll all return here. Naturally. Tom scoffed and said. Not like we have a choice, boss. You've compelled us to always return. Not get carried away by hunger. Have more control over our urges. And abandon all past habits. Kai smirked, but his eyes shifted a little. Maybe I shouldn't have told them that part. Nah, it'll cause less trouble for me. They were practically harmless unless he gave the command. Charming, isn't it? Kai said dryly. I gave you all new leases on life, and the only catch is total magical obedience. You're welcome. With a quick grin, he blurred away. En route to Julia's apartment. He finally glanced at the phone he hadn't checked in 2 days. Multiple missed calls. Julia. Caddy. Julia again. Shit, Kai muttered. What now? He turned and sped toward Julia's apartment. Something told him this wasn't going to be another magic lesson. Read in advance of 10+ chapters on my Patreon. Patreon.com/FredoZY. Chapter 41. Chapter 41, Comfort. Kai sprinted through the dark streets, the night pressing heavy on his back like a cloak woven in urgency. His mind raced faster than his feet, heart pounding as the warehouse faded behind him. The missed calls. Julia and Caddy worried him, and Julia's more so. The moment he reached Julia's apartment complex, he didn't even hesitate and surged up the steps and threw open the door. Thud. His body collided with an unseen force. He recoiled, blinking. "What the?" he muttered, then paused and scoffed softly, almost impressed. "Well, I'll be damned," he said, placing a hand on the invisible barrier shimmering faintly in the air. She actually got the boundary spell up. Through the translucent magical shimmer, he saw Julia. And instantly, the little smile vanished from his face. Her eyes were red and puffy from crying. Her skin pale. Her clothes speckled faintly with blood. He could smell it, washed off but still lingering enough for his vampire senses to pick up, like a ghost that refused to fade. The coppery scent mingled with her natural scent. His first instinct, his first thought wasn't even formed with words, just a mental "though shit." Julia met his eyes. She said nothing, but slowly raised her hand and gave a downward motion. The barrier flickered, then dissolved into nothing, allowing Kai to step inside. She stood there, fragile and shaking like a snapped violin string still trying to hum a tune. Without hesitation, he went to her, pulling her into a firm embrace. Her sobbing started before she could even form a word, her hands clutching his shirt, face buried into his chest. He held her tightly, gently stroking the back of her head, murmuring, "Hey, hey, what happened? What's going on, Julia?" She looked up at him, and through broken breaths, said, "She's dead. Katie's mom. She's dead." The words hit Kai like a slap across the soul. He blinked. "What?" he said, almost reflexively. Julia nodded. "Yes." Kai's jaw tightened. "How the fuck, Julia? I told you to stay away from her." "I did." Julia's voice cracked as her body tensed in his arms. "I stayed away. I ignored her calls, all of them. She kept trying but I didn't answer. I swear I didn't. But then she came with Caddy. She said something about a complex spell to get Marina's stash. She sounded different this time, like she knew what she was doing." As Julia spoke, Kai's heart sank further. His eyes widened slightly as her words pieced together something he couldn't believe. What the actual fuck? The pattern, it was still following the same trajectory as the original broken timeline. Even with Julia removed from the equation, things were still happening. As if fate itself refused to let go and somehow found a way to set the motion. He blinked back into the moment as Julia started pacing frantically, wringing her hands. "She came to my place, she begged me. Said it was just one spell. One. That she'd leave me alone after that. And I thought..." Her voice cracked as she stumbled back to the couch. "I thought if I just helped, she'd go. I didn't want her here. I didn't want to be part of it." Julia curled into the couch, knees pulled to her chest, tears rolling freely again. "I shouldn't have done it. I should have just said no. But I just wanted her gone, Kai. I didn't mean for it to happen." Kai sat beside her, bringing her close again. "It's okay, shhh, it's okay. She was bleeding," Julia whispered hoarsely. "And I tried to help. I used the healing spell, I tried. But it wasn't enough. I wasn't enough. She died anyway." Kai held her tighter, his voice gentle but steady. "It's not your fault, Julia. Isn't it?" "No." He looked at her seriously. "If anyone's to blame, it's Marina. Not you. She's the one who sent her down this road. You were just caught in the wake." She wept for a while longer, letting it all fall apart in his arms. 30 minutes passed in a quiet haze before Julia finally emerged from her room in a new outfit, now clean and calmer. Kai gave her a small smile. "You got the boundary spell down, hey?" Julia nodded, then hesitated. it happened after. He understood instantly. She had probably fled home after the incident, desperate and terrified. Her emotions must have surged, and that was when the spell took root. A consequence of the trauma. Kai's tone turned thoughtful. Magic doesn't just come from anywhere, Julia. That's the miserable thing about it. It's almost always fueled by negativity. She frowned. What do you mean? I mean magic is strongest when we're at our weakest. Sadness, fear, desperation, anger, depression, those are what amplify it. Julia laughed bitterly. That's fucked up. Kai scoffed. Yeah, well. Quentin said the exact same thing, you know. She slowly walked over and sank into the couch beside him, resting her head on his shoulder. The silence was almost warm this time. Kai added softly, the real danger is letting that power consume you. Let it root too deep, and eventually, you won't recognize yourself anymore. There was a beat of silence. And then he whispered something else, something softer and barely above a breath. Julia looked up. What did you say? She asked. Her eyes met his, and only then did she realize just how close his face was. So close she could see the silver flecks in his irises. So close she could feel his breath on her face. And he, in turn, was hit by the scent of her cloves and tears, blood and lavender of her shampoo. His breath caught for half a second. And then Julia leaned in. Tentatively and slowly. Her lips brushed against his lightly. And Kai didn't pull away. Pulling away, he looked into her eyes for permission. Come here. He murmured softly and brought a hand to her face, lightly brushing a strand of wet hair away from her face, and leaned in, gently blowing hot air against her ear before pressing an open-mouthed kiss to her neck. She inhaled sharply in satisfaction at the feeling, her body shuddering when the warm air hit her skin, and looked up at him with her irresistible eyes when he pulled back. She could feel the heat rising up in her whole body, and she didn't want that feeling to end. He opened his mouth to speak but never got a chance to. Read an advance of 10+ chapters on my Patreon. Patreon.com/FridoZY. Chapter 42, Chapter 42, Julia R18. Before he could utter a word, she leaned into him, pressing her weight against him. Julia was kissing him. And she moaned into his lips. Her moan made him feel like he'd lose all of his self-control, and as he held her waist, she whimpered against his lips as he kissed back harder and brought his hand up to cup the back of her head, drawing her closer. He deepened the kiss, and oh fuck. She wanted more of it, she craved more. She groaned, deep in her throat, when he nipped at her lower lip with his teeth. And wait, where was he going? Why is he pulling away from me? Kai pulled away with an equally deep groan and looked into her eyes and asked. Where did that come from? She was at a lose as the question took her by surprise, speechless for the first time in her life. How could she tell him that she had been thinking about it for a while now, even before James was out of the picture, and that filled her with guilt? I'm sorry, I shouldn't have kissed you. No, don't apologize, besides I would have done it if you hadn't. Kai shook his head and reassured her. It is nice, hot as fuck too, if I might add. It was. Oh yes, let's try that again, shall we? His lips danced over hers for a second, toying, before he finally pressed against her again. It was slower than last one, more tender, as if she was too fragile, and he brought his hand up to her face, cupping her cheek lightly. She nipped at his lip as he had done previously and pulled him closer to her and straddling him. She took this opportunity to deepen the kiss, slipping her tongue into his mouth and bringing her hands up to his hair, enjoying the soft strands between her fingers. Without breaking the kiss, he hooked one of his hands underneath her thigh and the other behind her soft and delicate neck. This new angle meant that she was the one having to dip her head and kiss him from above, making him look up into her eyes with lust. He then slowly moved his hand on her thigh down to her perky ass. She took a chance and rocked her hips into his, pulling a soft moan from him as she felt him begin to get hard under her with a groan. She reached for the buttons, but his hand moved, stopping her. Not yet. She nods and continued kissing when he suddenly stood up despite her being in him and moved them both to her bedroom. He laid her down and he had started peppering small kisses down her neck as soon as she had stopped eating his lips, and she gasped again when he started nibbling on her neck and feeling his teeth scrape the skin causing goosebump all over her body. "Holy fuck, Julia, are you so sensitive everywhere?" he murmured against her skin as he kissed it on intervals. "Wait, no, don't tell me. I want to discover for myself, so just stay there and enjoy it." He drew back slightly with a smirk, one hand on her hip as he started to taking off his shirt himself. Julia stared at his chest in lust and hunger as she watched him discarding his clothes on the floor. She appreciated the slight dips just above his collarbones and his toned body. "Like what you see?" He was smirking and she replied with a smirk of her own, very much so, and simply started to take off her clothing. He brought his hands up to her waist, trailing them up her smooth skin as she shuddered. "Has anyone ever told you you're fucking gorgeous and built like a goddess?" he asked, tearing his eyes away from her chest to look up at her. "Because if haven't, then let me be the first to announce it." She laughed and took his face in her hands. "Shut up and kiss me, Kai." "Yes, my lady, your wish is my command." He obliged, taking her mouth again as he ran his hands up her back and toyed with the clasp of her bra. He broke the kiss and asked, "Is this okay? Tell me if you want me to stop." She nodded and pressed her body closer to him, grinding her hips down once again. He undid the clasp slowly, giving her time to process what was about to happen, and she kept kissing him however, so he slid the straps off her arms and tossed it to the side, quickly replacing the material with his own hands. "That feels much better," she said to him, making Kai smirk. She keened, jumping slightly as she felt him thumb brush over her hard and erect nipples and pulled away, climbing off of him. And now laying back on bed again and felt him playing with her nipple again as he suddenly pinched her left nipple and kissed her right one, relishing in the delicious little moan she let out. "Tell me what you want," he said, his voice dripping with lust as he continued kissing and licking around her areola. "Tell me what you want me to do to you." He flicked her nipple with his tongue, slightly causing her to shiver in delight. "You. I want you." The words were slightly strangled as they came out, and Kai chuckled, dipping his head again to press a soft kiss against her breast and then alternating between kissing, sucking, licking, and pinching her nipple, almost driving her insane. "Tell me, Julia, what do you really want me to do to you?" "I want you to touch me. To taste me. Fuck me, Kai. I want you to do whatever you want to me, just make me feel alive and less miserable, please." She whimpered, much to his satisfaction. "Good girl," he whispered, and rewarded her by biting softly on her nipple as he held it between his teeth while his tongue was gently licking the very tip of her nipple. Before he knew it, she had managed to wriggle out of her loose trousers and Kai had taken off his belt and unzipped his trousers as well. He took them off slowly, watching her face for any hint of hesitation. There was none. Her eyes were glassy and blown wide with lust as she lifted her head off of the pillows to watch him. "Are you expecting me to tell you off, Kai? Oh, don't worry, I need this more than you know." Her eyes roamed every inch of his body before settling on his bulge, which his briefs weren't doing a good job of concealing at all. He crawled back to her, closing the gap between their mouths, softly at first and then deeper, his mouth pressing firmly against hers. One hand on her stomach trailed lower, until it dipped beneath the waistband of her underwear, his long fingers pressing further until they brushed against that little bundle of wetness underneath. Her breath hitched in her throat as her whole pelvis twitched forward, that same heat coiling like a snake within her. He left it alone for now, licking into her mouth as his fingers slowly massaged her folds, teasing her as he kept his fingers from sinking into her, almost making her go insane at the torture before she took the initiative and pushed his fingers in and sank between her folds. He chuckled against her mouth at how wet she was, how ready she was for him, as he slowly sank 2 fingers inside. She let out a soft moan that he eagerly swallowed and started working them in and out of her while angling his thumb go rub against her clit, listening for every sigh she gave when he crooked his fingers at just the right angle. Julia's head fell back against the pillows and she keened, "Oh hi, breathy noise as Kai moved his thumb on her clit and started rubbing in faster, in a focused circles. Her hand shot out and gripped his arm almost as if trying to tear it away due to the sudden burst of pleasure, squeezing her eyes shut as waves of pleasure washed over her. It didn't take long for the pressure to build and become too much, and Julia cried out as she came, bucking her hips against his hand. He slipped his fingers out and Julia barely registered when he moved down the bed. She was still seeing stars from one of the most explosive orgasms of her life when she became aware of her pants being slid down her legs. He was kissing down her body now as he took them off, and made sure to stop and scrape his teeth against that soft spot right below her stomach and smirking against her skin as she moaned again. Oh, how responsive she was, especially after coming down from her orgasmic high, which felt almost magical. He took his time when he was finally between her legs, slowly running his hands up her legs to her knees as he parted them. She purred like a cat when his mouth first made contact with her heat, repeatedly clenching and unclenching her fists as he pressed against her and gently licked at her folds before diving deeper. He groaned against her, his mind going blank as he took her in. Her scent and taste was intoxicating as blood. Both could be classified under what he could only use one word for: it was ambrosia. Her back arched off the bed as he continued eating her out, licking and sucking her clit, and she moaned softly. It was music to his vampiric ears and a deep guttural noise that he wanted imprinted on his memory forever. His hands slipped under her thighs and drew her even closer to him as she was trying to get away from the euphoric overload, holding her still as she writhed underneath his mouth. Oh shit, cock hey kai, tha ugh fuck eels good. She struggled out as her vision began to swim and her eyes rolled to the back of her head with a stupid grin on her face. Her hands came down to tangle in his hair, pushing him in deeper now as her moans slowly devolved into incoherent babbling. He held her hips in place as she came again, and he felt her hold on hair tighten and her body shaking, crying out loudly as it all came crashing down on her at once. Sorry James, maybe I am too selfish for being glad you lost your memories. He carried her through it, through her hips stuttering and her thighs clamping down around him, and he would have winced had he been an ordinary human. And when he finally lifted his head, she let her hands drop from his hair and she was panting heavily, her eyelids fluttering. He couldn't help himself from pressing a soft kiss to her hot spot, taking a taste of her sweet nectar and taking note of the way her whole body reacted. She was so sensitive that it was torturous, and the flush on her cheeks extended down her chest. Holy shit, I've never had that level of pleasure before. Julia panted, barely able to get the words out. Well, I always aim to. Please. He came back up the bed beside her. She rolled her eyes, catching his lips with her own. I want more. I want you. Someone's definitely embraced her sin of lust and greed. He teased, a hand shooting out to toy with her nipple. Was that not enough for you? She whined and swatted his hand away. It's called foreplay, is it not? The lead up to the actual event. Oh, think you can handle the main event, but hey, if you want that, then I wouldn't dream of disappointing you. Read an advance of 10+ chapters on my Patreon. patreon.com/FridoZY. Chapter 43, Chapter 43, Julia R18 End. Smiling at him, she looked down at his shaft, gulping and licking her lips. She reaches for the ramming rod of a cock and swirls her tongue around the bulbous gland's penis before giving a loving and passionate kiss, earning a moan from Kai. Hearing her lover's moan only made her libido go up exponentially, and then sticks her tongue out. She then places both her hands on the girthy man-meat and proceeds to give him a hand job. The sudden warm intrusion of his urethra and hand job made Kai scrunch his face up in pleasure. Oh damn, Julia! He moans. Hearing Kai being pleasured, Julia then withdraws her tongue and, gulping one more time, she opens her mouth as wide as she could and begins to engulf his cock. The warm feeling surrounding his cock made Kai moan even louder. Julia then begins to bob her head at a furious pace. Each time she bobbed her head down, more of his massive ramrod of a cock. She's almost as good as Jane. Holy fuck! Julia, your throat feels fucking great. So warm and tight. She muffled in surprise as she felt him suddenly shift in position. Julia, I'm gonna fuck the shit out of your throat, so here, let me take charge. Kai said with lust-filled look. Surprised at his sudden outburst, she places her hands onto the bed to balance herself and Kai lifts her head off his dick. It took a while though, as she is already deep-throating a large portion of it, but soon she was left with only the head of his penis in between her lips. He then guided her pretty little head down on his meat stick, which went straight down her gullet, much to her pleasure though. Julia then began groaning, and the sheer vibrations making him groan at the extreme pleasure. Oh fuck yeah! That feels fucking good! He groaned before he raised her head up again and guiding her head down again and faster each time, each movement spearing his dick down her throat. After about 15 minutes of throat fucking his goddess, he was approaching his climax. Holy shit, here it comes, Julia! He got out between pants, his face scrunching up in pure bliss as he felt his cum making its way from his ballsack and through his shaft. With Kai's orgasm imminent, she pulls the prick out of her throat and leaves only the head in her mouth. She proceeds to suck and lick it to get the cum she so desperately desired. Ugh! Oh god, I'm coming! He groaned just as he shot a literal gallon's worth of his spunk into her mouth, making her cheeks puff out at the force of his ejaculate. She swallows it all in one gulp, but before she can open her mouth to breath, another load erupts into her needy mouth, filling it to capacity once more as Kai groaned at the feeling of release. Julia moaned as she swallows every drop of it before Kai pulls out and rubs his penis, prompting himself to ejaculate more, and soon enough 2 shots of cum covers up her succulent boobies and her face. Oh fuck! Kai moaned as his orgasm died down. Gasping at the sheer amount of cream all over her boobies and face, she then uses her magic and casted the liquid extraction spell to remove most of the cum, and to Kai's shock she proceeds to feed herself until she was cleaned up completely. Holy shit, this version of her was never shown on the show, she's a fucking freak. Wow Kai, that tasted like honey, she said. She gasps in surprise when she notices that Kai's cock was still rock hard. Okay, what the actual fuck? You came and that thing is still hard. Oh yeah, what can I say? Since it's still hard, want to relieve it, Julia? I still have enough energy left to give you for the main event. Kai chuckled. Okay then. Julia said as she goes to lay down on her back with her head resting on the pillows. Prove how much you want me by fucking my tight and needy little pussy with that cock of yours until you spray a lot of cum into my womb. Oh, I plan to. Kai smirked before going over to lay atop his lover. They engage in a passionate kiss before Kai positions his vena prick at the tip of her orifice. With that he then gently slides his enormous sex organ into her vagina. The sheer pleasure causes Julia to whimper in pain as she felt like his dick was splitting her in two. Julia whimpered in pain, and before Kai could ask if she was okay, she puts a finger on his mouth. Just keep going, Kai, she ordered. Nodding, Kai pushes 2 more inches into her depths, making her moan loud. The sheer pleasure that followed the initial pain was enough to drive her crazy, deciding that being slow and gentle wasn't going to happen because she needed that pussy pounding and she needed it now. Gah! Fuck being gentle, I want you to just shove that dick in me and just pound me into oblivion, Julia shouted in desperation. Alright then, don't complain to me later when you're bow-legged, you naughty girl, chuckled the heretic. Grasping his cock with both hands, he takes a deep breath before he shoves his entire length straight into her depths, the sheer tightness making him groan in pleasure. Holy ff fuck! Julia screamed, the feeling of being so filled by the massive dick making her whimper a bit. Fuck it, just fuck me, Kai. Fuck my tight ass pussy. Thought you'd never ask. Get ready because I'm going to reshaping your pussy and fuck you so hard I put you in a wheelchair and the healing wouldn't be of any use. Kai grinned before withdrawing his entire length from her pussy. Oh fuck, that's going to be addicting. Julia got out between moans. Before she could speak more, Kai shoves with all his might and spears his entire length into her, penetrating her cervix and entering her womb. Shit! It feels like you've speared my womb. Ugh, stop being slow and just fuck me really fast and hard, damn it, Julia ordered. Kai, smirking at his lover's desperation, and begins slamming into her at such a fast pace that the whole fucking bed was shaking. Oh fuck, Oh fuck. That feels so fucking good. That's right. Fucking pound that cunt until it breaks. Split me in two. She moaned out loud in pure bliss as an orgasm hits her. Feeling Julia's pussy spray a water hose of pussy juice, this caused Kai to pick up the pace, fucking her at a speed that was impossible for humans to follow. That's right. Fuck me like that, oh god. She was taken by surprise when Kai removed his cock from her pussy and suddenly flipped her over and forced her face into the pillow. Julia decided she liked the new position and reached backwards with her hands and proceeded to spread her ass cheeks, giving Kai a pleasurable view of both her puckered anus and her wet vaginal opening. Hurry up and fuck me, who said you could stop? She shouted in the pillow, muffling her voice. Without a word, Kai just slams his dick into her pussy, getting a loud high-pitched squeal from her. Thrusting his entire length into her at such a furious pace he was practically thrusting her head into the bed frame. Julia opened her mouth to scream, but nothing came out as she was fucked into oblivion. After about half an hour of slamming his lover senseless, Kai felt his ballsack begin to boil from within, readying another massive load of cum. Oh shit, here it comes, Julia. Get ready because you're gonna be filled. Kai said through pants. Fuck yes. Fill every nook and cranny of my pussy. Shoot that cum inside me and give me a baby. She said as she goes through an earth-shattering orgasm that makes her whole body shake. Oh shit! Kai almost shouted before he came to a halt. Feeling Julia's pussy clamp down onto his dick and practically holding him in place, Kai moaned as he shot a massive load into her, spraying her womb white as snow. Oh my god, yes! Julia moaned as she relished in pleasure of Kai's sperm entering her cervix and getting into her uterus. Pulling out, Kai watched in amazement as he saw his massive load of spunk spill out of her pussy. Julia smiled at him before her eyes closed in utter exhaustion and euphoria, and her body finally shut down and fell unconscious. Wow, talk about a stress reliever. Read in advance of 10+ chapters on my Patreon. patreon.com/FridoZY. Chapter 44, Chapter 44, You. The sun hovered lazily above the Breakbulls grounds as Kai stood in front of the physical kid's cottage, hands in pockets, dark curls slightly ruffled from the morning breeze. His eyes were narrowed and then smiled like a total idiot. Well, not at the building of course, but at the memory flooding his mind like a tidal wave of sensation. Flashes of scenes about last night, his vampire mind made it much more vivid. Soft lips against warm skin, Julia's breath hitching beneath his as he worked his way in her. The way her eyes locked with his before everything blurred into writhing heat and tension snapped loose, her pleading underneath him not to stop, her. He slapped both palms against his cheeks. Smack! Smack! Shit, wake the fuck up, he muttered. That's not what you should be thinking about, Kai. What you should be is worried about missing the entire fucking trials. He blinked, looked up at the building, then smirked faintly. Although, it was so fucking worth it either way. With that, he stepped inside. The cottage was, kinda empty. His brows twitched, no music or drunken humming. Where the fuck is Elliot and Margot? He scanned the room. His enhanced hearing, ever sharp, picked up voices coming from the backyard. He headed toward the sound, opened the back door, and there they were. Elliot, standing with Quentin and Alice, both dressed in clean white Breakbulls South overalls. Kai blinked. Breakbulls South is already over? Fuck. There goes my chance of meeting Mayakovsky. He groaned dramatically. But before he could process that, his eyes landed on someone else. A man standing just beside Elliot. Broad-shouldered, angular features, and a smile a little too well rehearsed. Mike. Well, hello, meat suit Mike, Kai thought dryly. Suddenly, Elliot turned to Quentin, peering at his face. Why is your face making that face? Quentin blinked. Hey! Oh my god, Elliot gasped theatrically, they totally had sex. Mike shrugged. Yeah. Kai raised a brow, then grinned. Well, I do recommend a good diagnosis of intercourse now and then. especially for a pair with that much pent-up tension. Everyone turned to him. Kai? Where the hell have you been? Quentin asked. Yeah, Alice echoed. You missed the rest of the trials. Kai winced, shrugged they. Smiled weirdly. Well if you must ask. Elliot narrowed his eyes. Oh, you got laid, didn't you? Kai froze, half laughing. Okay, what the hell? Did you just sniff that out? You got a newly got laid radar now. Fine-tuned, Elliot replied proudly. Kai rolled his eyes, then turned to Mike. And you are? Elliot beamed. Kai, this is Mike. Mike, Kai. Kai extended a hand, eyes narrowed just slightly. Pleasure's mine. Mike took it. Firm grip. Nice. Kai smirked. Handshakes reveal a lot, you know. Trust, power, and even deception. His tone carried more weight than the others seemed to notice except for Mike, who tilted his head subtly. Kai's gaze flicked to the left as if looking at something. Oh. Didn't know it was moth season. Everyone blinked. Elliot blinked. What? Kai didn't answer as he looked back watching Mike. No reaction. Wow. You really are good, aren't you? He stood quietly as Elliot and Mike talked with Alice and Quentin. Kai observed Mike's gait, posture, magic signature with a form of measure. It was precise, not quite at the Niffin level, but potent and very well controlled. Oh, this'll be fun. Alice and Quentin turned to leave, with Mike offering a smooth, nice meeting you. Quentin gave a non-committal hum. Kai stepped beside Quentin, lowered his voice. Hey! Don't be weird about whatever's happening with Alice. For the love of God, shake off the excuses and just go for it. Quentin blinked. Okay. Kai grinned, took both drinks from Quentin's hands, and walked back toward Mike and Elliot. Well, time to see if I'm still technically a student or... He downed the drink in one go. Wow! Tastes like magic, Elliot, bravo! He tossed the cup, downed the second. Ciao! As he passed Mike, he added with a sly smile, nice to meet you. Really looking forward to what's to come. Elliot turned as Kai walked off. What the hell is he on about? Behind his back, Mike's eyes narrowed. Dash. Dean Fogg's office. Kai sat before the desk, arms folded. All right. What's the verdict? Lay it on me, he said. Dean Fogg steepled his fingers. You missed the trials, Kai. Every first year is required to undergo them for a reason. I know. They are designed to evaluate magical focus, endurance, adaptability. The essence of why we send students to break Bulls South. Something important came up, Kai cut in. I couldn't abandon it. Dean Fogg raised an eyebrow. I'm sorry, Kai added more sincerely. I had to see it through. Dean narrowed his eyes. Does this have to do with the ether phage? Kai paused. Yes. Another beat of silence. Is it also related to you being a vampire? Silence. Dead. Graveyard silent. Kai's jaw twitched. Well fuck. So they did know. He sighed. Since when? Dean didn't flinch. Since the moment you came out of that closet. Kai muttered under his breath. Fuck. A pause. So, what now? You gonna expel me? Dean suddenly burst out laughing. Kai blinked. Oh, calm down, Dean said, waving a hand. I don't have a problem with what you are. This school is filled with all kinds. Some are just like you. He leaned back. If we wanted to do something, we'd have done it already. So. I'm not expelled. Dean smiled and asked. Well, was the ether phage helpful with whatever you needed? Kai smiled. Flawlessly. Then no. You're not expelled. Kai exhaled in relief. Oh, thank God. Now get going, Dean said, flicking his hand toward the door. You've got class with the rest. Kai turned, heading out. Well, good to know being undead still gets me grades. He left the office with a skip in his step and headed toward his dorm. Along the path, his thoughts drifted again uninvited to a certain someone. I wonder what her sister had to tell her about, he thought. Read in advance of 10+ chapters on my Patreon. Patreon.com/FredoZY. Chapter 45, Chapter 45, Workload. Earlier that day, the warmth of morning light filtered softly through Julia's window, casting golden streaks across her sheets. After an intense and pleasurable night, the peaceful moment was short-lived. As Julia stirred awake, she heard a voice, smooth and teasing, say, "Good morning." It was Kai. His voice sent an involuntary shiver down her spine. She rolled over to face him with a sleepy smile. "Hey," she replied. "Hey," he said back, a smile forming on his lips. There was a pause between them, a comfortable silence charged with the memory of last night's delicious activity. "So, last night was, Julia murmured. Kai chuckled, "Yet." Leaning in, Julia kissed him gently. As she pulled away, Kai began to move in for another. Bang! The door to the apartment flung open. "Jules? You in?" someone called out. Julia's eyes went wide. "Shit, shit, shit," she cursed, scrambling off of the bed in panic. Kai blinked, still processing. "Who the hell is that?" "That's my sister Mackenzie." Kai muttered, "Ah right, she has *ma sister." Julia groaned. "I forgot to put up the boundary spell last night." In a frenzy, both of them rushed to grab whatever clothing they could find. Footsteps approached as her sister continued calling out. A beat later, the bedroom door swung open. "Oh," Mackenzie said flatly, her gaze dropping to Julia's panties lying by the doorway before moving to the pair with Kai already in his boxers and Julia clutching the blanket around herself. Mackenzie looked from Kai to Julia and raised an eyebrow. Hello." Julia smiled awkwardly. "Kenzie, hey. How are you?" Kai waved casually. "Hi. I'm Kai, nice to meet you." Then with a sarcastic grin, he added, "You really know how to ruin a moment." Kenzie blinked at that and cleared her throat. "Can I talk to you, Julia?" Kai stood, picking up his shirt and pants from the floor. "I'll excuse myself," he said, slipping past Mackenzie. "Nice to meet you." He gave Julia a subtle glance. "I'll see you later." Julia nodded, "Yet." Kenzie gave her a long, loaded look. As the door shut behind Kai, she arched a brow. "Well, that's a surprise." Julia frowned. "I mean, I expected hangover sweats and empty pizza boxes. Not a booty call," she added. "By the way, he's very hot." Julia sighed and flopped back onto the bed. Some time later, Julia sat across the table from Mackenzie, both with mugs in hand. "You look good," Kenzie said. "Much better than I expected." She paused for a moment, studying her. "I got a call from the station." "Yet?" Julia replied, voice even. "You're holding up well," Kenzie said, with slight disbelief. "I am doing okay." Kenzie gave a dry chuckle. "Yeah, I can see that." She leaned back. "James told us he's worried." Julia let out a bitter laugh. "Really? James? Well, let me bring you up to speed. James doesn't even remember me at all." Kenzie blinked, skeptical. "He called last month. Said the reason you dropped out was recovery." Julia rolled her eyes. "So much for anonymous. Besides, as you can see, I'm doing okay." Kenzie folded her arms. "Are you, though? Or are you just on a rebound?" Julia frowned. Kai isn't a rebound. Kenzie gave an unimpressed look. Funny, I never mentioned Kai. She sighed. I left you 8 messages with no response, Jules. What the hell? Julia rubbed her forehead. Sorry. I was caught up with something. Kenzie leaned forward. Mom knows you got arrested. She's trying to keep it out of the paper. She just got elected to the board of the Met and is closing on a new co-op. Julia looked at her calmly, then nodded. Of course she is. Kenzie didn't stop. She said you need help. But clearly you think you don't. Julia's voice grew colder. So she wants to stick me somewhere like she stuck Daddy, hey. Kenzie's face tightened. You confessed to being on drugs. You got arrested. You think she doesn't go to the opera with 10 judges who'd happily commit you? Mom. I said I'm okay, Kenzie, Julia snapped. You've seen for yourself I'm good. So let her know I love her, but she's not going to dictate what's good for me anymore. Kenzie exhaled, giving in. All right. I love you, Julia. But you need to stop getting into complications. Julia smirked. Life is all about complications. Can't avoid it. Kenzie paused, then laughed softly. That actually makes sense. Julia grinned. Kai said that. Kenzie rolled her eyes. Of course he did. Did I mention he's got a smoking hot body? Julia finished. They both laughed. I love you too, Kenzie, for coming. Kenzie smiled. What are sisters for? Kai sat at a wooden desk in Brakebills, trying not to fall asleep as the dean lectured from the front of the room. Your first semester at Brakebills was dedicated to the fundamentals of magic, the dean said. Kai half listened. His attention shifted the moment Penny entered the room. His thoughts drifted to Caddy. He had been trying to reach her over a day now. Nothing, no returned calls and no locator spell materials either, not that he could get any without flagging someone. Starting today, the dean continued, your course load will double. Look inside your bags. Kai groaned internally and looked into his bag, pulling out 4 thick books. Great. Because this is how I want to spend my time. The dean rambled on, alchemy, astronomy, botany, just to name a few. Fantastic, Kai thought sarcastically. All this extra workload when I could be training my minions, figuring out what the hell's up and tracking Caddy before she gets pulled into that cult of weirdos worshipping some underground lady or whatever. Everyone started moving toward their new study groups. Kai looked at the paper with his assigned partner. Great. Now who the hell are you? Later, in the library, he spotted a girl with oversized glasses sipping from a thermos. Mary? Kai asked. She looked up with a grin. Oh. You must be Kai. Yep. That's me, he replied, sliding into the seat across from her. As he sat down, his vampire-enhanced senses were immediately assaulted. A waft of body spray hit his nose. Kai blinked. God, what is that smell? His sharp hearing picked up Penny's voice across the library. Hell is real, and it smells like Axe body spray. Kai shook his head. Quentin must be trying again. Poor guy. Mary tapped on her open book. So, for botany, we're starting with studying the vine species growth rate and its natural absorption properties. If cultured right, it becomes a conduit for body-based spells. Really delicate work. Kai blinked at her, sighed, then muttered internally, I hate school. After finishing up with Mary, Kai made his way back to his dorm room. He opened the door and stepped in only to freeze mid-step. There, lounging in Leo's bed, was a half-naked girl, a bong in hand, exhaling a cloud of smoke that smelled vaguely like cherries. Kai turned to leave, hand already on the doorknob, then paused and said with dry sarcasm, Wait, this is my room, right? Just then, Leo emerged from the bathroom, a towel slung lazily around his neck. He looked up and grinned. "Oh hey, dude." Kai gave him a blank stare, then glanced back at the girl on the bed. Leo waved a hand toward her casually. "That's Susan." Kai rolled his eyes. The irony wasn't lost on him. He was officially in the same exact situation as Julia's sister, walking into something he did not want to see. "Your girlfriend?" Kai asked dryly. "Nat," Susan chimed in, blowing out another puff of sweet-scented smoke. "Study buddies." Kai thought to himself, "Oh yeah, study buddies, and getting high together, it would seem. Probably other things I definitely do not want to know." He dropped his bag on his bed and turned right back around, stepping out of breakables once again. The scene shifted to Kai standing in front of his newly created hybrids. Travis narrowed his eyes. "Wait, what did he just say?" Kai looked at the group, holding up a photograph. "I said I need someone found." Devon frowned, crossing his arms. "Why are we on search duty? Can't you just do a tracking spell or something?" Kai gave him a deadpan look. "If I could just find her with a spell, I wouldn't need you now, would I?" Larry tilted his head. "Who is she?" "Someone important," Kai replied. "Someone who needs to be watched very closely." He handed them the photo. "I want eyes everywhere." Then, shifting gears, he asked, "So how's the spell training going?" Julius shrugged. "Telekinesis spell's easy enough." Michael muttered, "It's the invisic spell that's giving me a headache." Kai nodded slowly, noting their progress. "Good. Progress is progress." He pulled out a folded piece of paper from his coat pocket and opened it. "There are 3 new spells here for you to learn: the maiming spell, the pain-inducing spell, and a boundary spell." Tom raised an eyebrow. "Why the attack spells?" Kai glanced up at him. "They'll come in handy in the very near future. Especially the boundary spell." The group nodded in agreement, accepting their new assignments. "Oh," Kai added, "you're free to move as you wish now, until told otherwise." Julius stepped forward. "We could use a little more freedom." Kai turned his head slowly to look at him, expression hardening. "The only extra freedom you'll get is when I decide to release you from this earth." The tone was sharp and calm, but with a cold finality that cut through the air like a blade. They all froze, not expecting that edge from him. Kai turned on his heel. "Now get to it." He left them standing in silence. Read an advance of 10+ chapters on my Patreon. Patreon.com/FredoZY. Chapter 46, Chapter 46, Paranoia. Paranoia. Most people say too much of it is unhealthy, crippling even. But what they fail to grasp is why some individuals develop it in the first place. It isn't just a baseless fear or a symptom of overthinking. No. It's a mechanism, a finely tuned survival instinct forged in a world that rarely plays fair. It's not just fear of what might happen. It's a projection of what will happen, of how things can turn to shit with the flick of a wrist or the whisper of a curse. For those diagnosed with clinical paranoia, the mind is a chaotic feedback loop. Their amygdala, responsible for processing threats, is in a constant state of red alert. Patterns are overanalyzed, threats perceived even where none exist. But for magicians, it's not just mental, it's necessary. Because the threats are real. For the magically inclined, paranoia isn't a disorder, it's a survival trait. A magician doesn't just fear the irrational, they prepare for it. A spell could fall from the sky, a curse could be embedded in a letter, a demon could manifest from the void of a cracked mirror, or worse, some ancient, forgotten god could get bored and decide you'd make a great little plaything. What happens next? Your insides become your outsides, your thoughts aren't your own, and suddenly you're dancing to a tune you didn't even hear begin. Magic amplifies everything from perception, awareness, vulnerability to problems as well. You're trained to expect the impossible, because the impossible happens daily. There's no such thing as a safe zone. Attacks can come from shadows, reflections, doorways, wards, or even your own blood. The deeper your knowledge of magic, the more you understand just how many ways there are to die and how absurdly unpredictable those ways can be. One of the most unfortunate victims of this truth was Marina. Fuck, she muttered under her breath, standing by the roadside, eyes locked on a familiar building. In her hand, she clutched a shard of blue glass. She'd been on high alert ever since she encountered him. Kai. Of course, not that she could ever really forget the man who put a literal insanity hex on her. A spell that took root in her psyche, writhing like a parasite. Removing it wasn't as simple as a counterspell. No, she'd had to transfer it. Through an agonizing ritual that cost her dearly. And even then, not without a price. The damage it left behind was significant. She'd used decoys. She'd locked herself in isolation. She layered protections over protections. And still he found her. Twice. He didn't even use brute force, but by bypassing her wards completely, slipping through with such elegance that it shook her understanding of finesse in magical theory. And then, there was the touch. The briefest connection when he cast that spell on her. His magic was dense, primal, and suffocating, nothing like a human's. That wasn't just an anomaly. That was wrong. That terrified her. Especially now, knowing he could track her somehow. And now, here she was back in this place. This fucking place. She moved, entered the apartment, moving through the hallway until she stood before a specific one door. She raised her hand, performed a small gesture, and the lock clicked open with a soft mechanical sigh. She smirked, ready to step inside only to crash face first into something solid. Thud. She staggered back. What the fuck? Frowning, she reached forward again, fingers brushing against something. A shimmerless, invisible wall. What the hell? She looked around, scanning the space with sharpened senses. A ward, she muttered, narrowing her eyes. Several attempts later, gesture after gesture, there was still no shimmer, no formulaic structure to decipher. Nothing. Just an unmoving, unrelenting invisible boundary. Powerful. Exceptionally so. That wouldn't work, you know. Marina turned sharply. Julia stood inside the room, leaning casually against a table, arms folded, a faint smile tugging at the corner of her lips. But do keep trying, she said sweetly. I could use a good stability test. Marina tilted her head. What kind of warding is this? Warding? Julia raised an eyebrow. No. That's just a simple boundary spell. A doorway boundary spell. Boundary spell. Yet. Handy little trick. Great for keeping out the occasional rat, or uninvited guests. The edge in her voice was unmistakable. Julia scoffed. What do you want, bitch? Marina's smile widened. Look at that. She has claws now. You're a bitch. What, because I killed Hannah? You murdered her, Julia snapped. Marina sighed dramatically. Okay, maybe I got a little carried away. But I don't respond well to people trying to steal my shit. Julia shook her head in disgust. Why are you even here, Marina? Well, Marina said, gesturing lazily, I'm here to raise the proverbial white flag. You're joking. Oh, believe me, I wish I was. I'd rather be doing anything else. But here we are. She flashed a crooked smile. It was either that or threaten to kill you and everything you hold dear if you keep getting in my way. Julia didn't flinch. Marina's eyes glinted as she added, then again, with your boyfriend, you don't have much to worry about. Kai. MMMN. Her jaw clenched. He's cost me more than anyone in a long while. The last time someone pissed me off like this, I was dealing with a swamp deity. Nasty business. I don't care, Julia said flatly. Oh, but you should, Marina countered. Because if he keeps coming after me, I might resort to measures, less savory. Julia's hand rose and each finger lighting up with flame. Bring it, bitch. The heat flickered with intent. Claws, Julia said. And hot. Marina raised an eyebrow, watching the flames dance. Impressive. I assume he taught you that. Julia extinguished them with a flick. And a lot more. So watch your tone. Marina chuckled. And the boundary too, hey. Julia caught the note of interest in her voice and narrowed her eyes. Oh, no. Don't even think about it. What shouldn't I think about, Julia? You know he'll never teach you, Julia said firmly. Oh, but I can be very persuasive, Marina said, voice silky. She stepped closer, leaning just a breath away from the barrier, locking eyes. Do you have any idea what most people would do to learn magic? It's like a drug, Julia. The more you learn, the more you need it. It eats away at you. You crave the unknown spells, the forbidden ones, the spells that make your bones ache just from casting them. Julia frowned as Marina continued. People will sell their literal shades for knowledge. They'll fuck for it. Which, by the way, I have no problem doing. She smirked. And I'm sure you would have too, if you didn't have Kai. Julia blinked, didn't respond. Marina chuckled. Then her hand flicked up, and a small silver-edged card appeared between her fingers. She bent, placed it delicately on the ground. I just want to talk. A truce. So tell him to give me a call. She straightened up, added, besides, it might benefit both parties. She traced her fingers against the barrier once more, then turned and walked away. Julia stared after her, then looked down at the card with a heavy sigh. She bent, picked it up. Bitch, she muttered. Read an advance of 10+ chapters on my Patreon. Patreon.com/FredoZY. Chapter 47, Chapter 47, Rot Given Voice. The night sky stretched overhead, cloudless and vast, stars burning cold and brilliant. The open-ceilinged botanic laboratory, its stone floor bathed in soft moonlight. Vines coiled delicately across an array of glass beakers and petrified wood shelves, some of roots were submerged in salt water trays and others in, whatever they were submerged in. Kai stood hunched over a series of vessels aligned beneath a constellation diagram. His fingers dipped a silver instrument into the salt water, carefully swirling the solution. So, if we time it with the zenith of Canis Major, the root system should be more receptive to channeling and its absorption rate will triple, Kai muttered thoughtfully, eyes flicking to a suspended vine in salt water. Mary, standing nearby with her sleeves rolled up and her hair messily tied back, glanced up at the sky. What about the moonlight? The journal I read yesterday said it can increase magical conductivity during the second lunar phase, especially when it hits the epidermal layer of vines. Kai gave a short nod. That would make sense. The lunar aspect would synergize with. He paused, reaching for a small vial filled with an iridescent silver reagent. But as he uncorked it, Mary's eyes widened in alarm. No, don't use that, she said, almost leaping forward. That one reacts badly under moonlight. It causes desiccation in vines, and paralysis in humans. If the moonlight touches it while it's on the vine, it could destabilize the entire batch. Kai froze, then gave her a deadpan look. Paralysis. Lovely. So you didn't mention this when we catalogued everything earlier because... He set the vial down with exaggerated care and dusted his hands off. The vine, meanwhile, finally gave a faint tremble almost like a heartbeat and extended a few inches longer, fresh growth turning a verdant green and sprouting with soft new tendrils. Mary sighed, watching it. Half victory, half disappointment. It stopped. Kai observed silently, then murmured, not enough properties to absorb. It's hungry, and we're feeding it scraps. Maybe we got the constellation wrong, Mary offered. Kai shook his head. No. That's not the problem. Something's missing. Either an energizing mineral, a reactive core, or an amplifying compound, Mary finished. There's a jar of essence bark stored at the compound near Welter's Stadium. It might do the trick. Without another word, she turned and briskly exited the laboratory, the door closing gently behind her. Kai remained, staring at the vine, then slowly turned his gaze to the reagent Mary had warned him about. He picked it up, tilting it slightly as the silvery contents shimmered under the moonlight. Paralysis-inducing, desiccation-causing moon juice. Nice to know it doubles as biological napalm, he muttered, placing it back. Then he froze as a scream tore through the air. Subtle and unnoticeable, to anyone else not close to the source. His vampiric hearing zeroed in on it, then said, "The Welter's Stadium." He didn't finish the thought. He moved. The night blurred past as Kai Vamp sped across campus, the laboratory already far behind. He arrived at the stadium's back entrance in seconds. The first thing that hit him was the coppery smell of blood in the air. His breath caught and his eyes darted around before looking down. He saw a pair of glasses lay askew near the entrance. He followed the scent, the stench of blood growing stronger. As he rounded the corner and there she was. Mary was on the floor, unmoving. A gash at the back of her skull bled out into the concrete, pooling fast and her eyes wide open. His face went eerily blank as he saw the body of his study mate. A few feet away stood someone holding a knife, as if caught mid-motion. The boy's stance was wrong and too stiff. Kai's lips pressed into a thin line. He didn't even look at the boy first. He kneeled beside Mary and gently closed her eyes. "Hello, Mike," he said evenly. The boy jerked slightly, startled. His light blue-tinted eyes locked onto Kai. "You?" Kai finally looked at him. Mike, or rather, the thing inside him, and as Mike raised his hand to cast. Kai raised his hand as well. The spell never left Mike's lips. He was ripped off the ground and thrown with supernatural force across the stadium, colliding with a support wall. A groan escaped him as he slumped. Before he could fall. Crack! A wooden beam, broken from the bleachers, shot across the field and impaled his shoulder, pinning him to the wall. Argh! The knife clattered from his hand. "Stop pretending," Kai said calmly over Mike's scream. "I know you can take that much." There was a low chuckle. "Well, if it isn't the surprise package," Mike wheezed, spitting blood. "Brutal of you, Kai, to do this to a fellow student." Kai tilted his head slightly, like a curious bird. And that he pointed to Mary's still body, was just a friendly sparring match. "Oh, that?" Mike grinned. "Unfortunate accident. Right place, wrong time. That's all." Kai's gaze sharpened. "Is that so, Martin?" Mike's eyes widened. "How d'ye?" Thunk. Another beam flew. This one pierced through Mike's thigh, pinning his leg in place. He howled in pain. "You're in no position to ask questions, Martin. Only to give answers." And then Mike's nose began to bleed. Then his ears, as pain exploded in his head along with some blood vessels popping as Kai used the aneurysm spell. Mike twitched violently as pain racked his borrowed body. Kai Vamp stepped, appearing directly below the impaled boy. His face had shifted. Veins darkened beneath his eyes. His sclera bloodshot. "You're weak," he said coldly. "A child playing God. And what do you do with power beyond imagination? You become the very thing you feared. A parasite. A coward." Martin laughed raspy and cracked. "You're interesting." Kai's expression twisted in disgust. "You're a speck. A speck of bile with delusions of grandeur. All you do is take. You kill not out of necessity, but for pleasure. There's nothing interesting about that. Then he raised his hand again and uttered, you will remember this pain every time you close your eyes, mentum et animam toi in tenebris laceret cruciamentum animi, let your mind and soul be torn in the darkness. Mike screamed. This time the scream was primal and guttural. It tore from his throat like something alive. He convulsed as an invisible force seared through the intangible fibers of his mind, cutting deep, leaving no visible trace, only agony. Kai stepped closer, watching. I could destroy the body, but that wouldn't touch the real monster. You don't have a shade, in that case I'll break what's left of your mind instead. Martin through Mike screamed again. Sweat poured from his brow. Blood dripped from his eyes now. You're nothing, Kai whispered harshly. Nothing but rot-given voice. A moment later behind them someone shouted in shock. Fuck. Professor Sunderland had just arrived with Professor March. They froze at the scene, the body on the floor, Mike crucified to the stadium wall, and Kai standing beneath him, shadows crawling behind his now calm face, as if he'd done nothing at all. Evening, Kai said, brushing his sleeves. And before either of you lecture me, he added, nodding at the corpse, you might want to deal with that first. The silence that followed was suffocating as Kai then stopped his little session with Mike. Read in advance of 10+ chapters on my Patreon. Patreon.com/FredoZY. Chapter 48, Chapter 48, Virgo Blade. The clean room. Or whatever Henry insisted on calling it wasn't what had Kai on edge. He stood against the wall beside Sunderland, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the ceiling but not really seeing it. His mind was elsewhere, gnawing at a mystery that had evaded even his sharpest senses. Where the fuck did that blade disappear to? The Virgo blade, the thing that had carved Penny open like a sacrificial offering, the same cursed thing that had vanished before he could even react. It hadn't blinked out in a flash or dissolved like some textbook magical artifact. No, one moment it was there and the next it was just gone. Houdini style. Was it the blood? Kai mused, jaw clenched. Could it have done a sleight of hand while I was distracted? He traced back the moment again, the exact time it slipped away from existence. His eyes narrowed. It had been just when Professors Sunderland and March entered the room. Coincidence? Maybe. But Kai wasn't a believer in coincidence. Especially not in breakbills. Kai. Hey, Kai, what's happening in there? Elliot's voice cut through his thoughts, and Kai blinked, looking down. Elliot and Quentin were striding toward the door. Professor Sunderland held her hand out firmly. You can't go in there. The door opened just as Dean Fogg stepped out, frowning deeply. But Kai's only glanced at the Dean before looking into the room at Mike. The guy was shackled by the ankles to the floor, seated like a calm prisoner. He lifted his head and looked straight at Kai. There was something in that stare, and it was not remorse, not confusion. It was caution. Kai's lip curled in a faint smirk. Liar. Mike had feigned amnesia when talking to Henry. But that was a lie because apparently Martin is in front row seat, in fact he's driving the bus and he was enjoying the show. His smirk faded slightly as a sliver of doubt crept in. What if Mike really was in there, somewhere buried, and Martin was using some shielding magic to bypass the Dean's diagnostics? He turned back to Elliot, catching the tail end of the argument. I'm telling you, Elliot insisted, this could have been mind control. Dean Fogg, ever the skeptic, replied dryly, there's always the possibility that this was Mike and he did this intentionally. Breakbill's hospital wing. Kai sat near the window, sunlight slanting over his shoulder. Penny lay in bed beside him, pale but still very much awake. You're not exactly the face I expected to wake up to, Penny muttered. Kai glanced over. I needed someone to bother, and since no one is allowed to go out of Breakbill's well, he said flatly, dry as dust. Penny scoffs before saying, sorry about Mary. Kai looked away, exhaling. She didn't deserve what happened to her. There was a pause. How are you feeling? Kai asked, changing the subject. At that moment, Alice walked in, arms full of thick books. Hey, she greeted, seeing Kai, a little surprised. Kai raised an eyebrow at the stack. Homework? Are you kidding? Alice set the books down with a soft thud. Yes, Penny. I brought you your homework. Why? Penny groaned. Kai tilted his head looking at one of the book, then mockingly said. Because clearly, nothing says recovering from magical impalement like a deep dive into enchantment theory. Alice gave him a deadpan look. I'm here because I thought you might like to talk to someone who isn't a healing student. Ouch, Kai said with a smirk. That's fast. Dismissing me in one breath. Alice shrugged. Well, I didn't know you'd be here, and since Katie's not here. That was salt on a fresh wound. Penny's expression stiffened. Is this pity? Because I don't need it. Alice's shoulders dropped. Okay. Fine. It's pity. At least she's honest, Kai muttered. I mean, she had shit to do. Elsewhere, Penny added quickly. I'm good. Great, Alice replied. Kai chimed in. Fantastic. Alice crossed her arms. I get it. People are generally disappointing. Kai looked at her, then nodded. That's just about everyone, yet. But sometimes, people aren't meant to thrive in every setting. Give them the right environment, the right time, and they'll surprise you. Penny scoffed. Doesn't matter. Me? I'm ready to pull the ripcord any moment. Kai leaned back slightly. Is that what you're doing now? Penny flinched suddenly, wincing as a jolt of pain racked his body. Penny. Kai leaned forward, concern flickering through him. Penny didn't respond. Penny, Kai said louder, as blood began to pool underneath the shirt. Alice gasped. Oh my God! Penny rolled up his shirt to reveal dark, root-like veins bursting from the wound. Shit, that's not good, Penny muttered. Alice turned to the hall. Somebody get Quentin. Kai stared at the cursed sapling growing from Penny's stomach. Then he had a thought. Should I siphon the magic from wound? Wait, Kai said. I might know a spell. It's supposed to kill organic plants. Alice blinked. What? Herbicide-type spell, Kai lied. Total crapshoot, but brace yourself. He reached out, hand glowing red as he placed it over the wound. Penny screamed. The roots began to curl, retracting into his body like retreating worms. The sapling blackened, shriveled, and died. Penny stopped screaming and passed out cold. Kai breathed, it worked. Alice stared. What was that? Told you. A spell that fries magical plants. Looking at the smooth skin where the wound had been. Kai took a moment, then excused himself to avoid the mountain of questions already cooking up inside Alice's brain. The nurse furrowed her brow. That spell doesn't exist in the Breakbulls lexicon, does it? Alice looked at Penny. No. It doesn't. She turned to the nurse. We still need to tell Quentin. Outside Penny's room. An hour later, Fogg and Quentin go to the Penny's wing and Alice explained everything. Quentin blinked. Wait, how did Kai do that? Dean Fogg cut in. Doesn't matter. What matters is what this curse was. Quentin said, it's the Virgo Blade curse. Used by a Lorien assassin in Fiery. The one used when the assassin tried to kill Jane and stabbed her with it and Rose Vine grew from the wound. Alice nodded. It's in the 4th book. Q looked at Alice in surprise. I read it for research. She told him. Quentin looked stunned. Okay, well, according to the lore the Rose Vine will keep growing until it strangles the heart, but there's only one way to cure a Virgo curse. Dean Fogg frowned. And that is. In the book, Jane survived only because the curse was severed after she burned the thing she treasured most. Alice added, for Jane, it was the doll she carries along with her always that looks just like her and it would be accepted as a substitute. But Kai already removed the sapling, Fogg said. Temporarily, Quentin replied. A few hours later. The air was tense as Dean Fogg rushed back to the hospital wing. He burst into the room to see Penny collapsed on the floor. Alice and Quentin were panicking. The sapling had returned, darker and more twisted. What the hell? The Dean started. Kai burst in behind them. His eyes widened as he saw the rose vine again. That's not possible. He rushed over, helping the nurse lift Penny onto the bed again. His gaze locked on the curse blooming anew. I thought he was cured, the nurse shouted. Apparently not, Kai growled. Quentin muttered, it wasn't lifted properly. The curse. I think it's anchored. Alice's face paled. It's like in the book the curse only lifts permanently when the victim's most precious item is burned. Kai frowned. Okay, but that still doesn't explain why it's back now. Quentin looked at the wound. The blade that made the cut, if it's still around, maybe the curse is tethered to it. The energy flows back in because the connection was never broken. Kai's gut tightened. Magic here worked on different rules. He had siphoned the active magic from the curse, but not its external supply. It's like draining a battery but leaving it plugged in, he muttered. So, now what? Kai asked. Quentin exhaled. We find what Penny values most and burn it. How hard can that be? Kai almost laughed. The candy wrapper Caddy had given Penny. But he stayed quiet. Fate didn't like being cheated. Come on, Quentin said. We'll check his room. Alice followed him out. Check for anything he might have brought back from Breakbull South, Kai said as he saw the two rushing out to Penny's room. Kai lingered a moment longer, then sighed and stepped into the hallway. He didn't get far before he stopped in his tracks. There, walking calmly past the corridor leading to the forest was a woman. Eliza. Read an advance of 10+ chapters on my Patreon. Patreon.com/FredoZY. Chapter 49, Chapter 49, Better Me Than You. Eliza had just finished speaking to Quentin, her heels clicking softly against the tiled corridor as she turned to leave only to stop short with a sharp gasp. Standing before her was Kai, gleaming with an unreadable expression. Hello, Professor, he said, the words rolling off his tongue in a tone so smooth it sent phantom shivers dancing down her spine. Kai was standing right in front of her, hands in pockets. So you're just going to pop up and leave, he continued, voice soft, without saying hello. Eliza straightened herself, she recovered quickly, tilting her chin. Well, she said sharply, I have more important things to do than wait around to greet everyone. Kai took a single step forward. The space between them disappeared until she was forced to tilt her chin to meet his eyes. Ouch, Eliza. I'm hurt. His mouth curved in a humorless smile. After the time we both had last time. Her eyes flicked to his lips. She swallowed, her thighs brushing together in a subtle, subconscious gesture before she caught herself. You're a big boy, I'm sure you'll be just fine, she snapped, covering her own slip with a cutting tone. Kai chuckled, a sound that made the air seem denser. I see you've spoken to Quentin, he went on. I have, she replied, her tone more composed now. I gave him a little advice. Regarding Penny? Or your brother currently squatting inside an innocent's body down in the clean room? That stopped her cold. Her eyes narrowed. How did? Oh, that doesn't matter, Jane, Kai interrupted coolly. What matters is how I can safely sever your brother's hold off him. Her gaze softened. Almost pitying. Oh, you poor thing. She touched her fingers to her temple. There isn't a way to do so. Kai frowned, dangerous stillness creeping into him. Why? Her lips curled into something like pity. The spell Martin used on Mike burned off his shade. That body? It's just a husk now. Even if it were salvaged, it'd be nothing but an empty shell. Kai's expression darkened. So the only way to stop Martin in that body is to kill the body, Eliza finished, her voice flat. Kai exhaled sharply, as though the air had been punched from his lungs. Kai sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. Oh! His eyes flicked over her shoulder, then back. And if you're planning to go see him, he added, tone suddenly darker, I suggest you don't. Eliza's eyes twinkled, though her voice betrayed curiosity. What are you talking about? It might not end well for you, Kai warned, voice an edged hush. Eliza's lips quirked in a sad, almost fond smile. Oh, you mean that, she said, cryptic as ever. Kai gave her a side eye. What the hell does that mean? There's always a price for everything we do, Kai, she whispered, stepping closer. She pressed a brief, lingering kiss against his lips. He reached to pull her in, but she pulled away just as quickly. Always, she repeated, her gaze solemn now. Everyone will be where they need to be, when they need to be. Goodbye. Then she turned and walked away, leaving Kai staring after her, more unsettled than he liked to admit. The hospital room. Professor Lipson stood quietly in a corner, clipboard in hand, as Quentin and Alice stood before a bowl. Between them, Quentin handed Alice a crumpled candy wrapper. She took it, set it alight with a quiet click of magic, then dropped the burning scrap into the bowl. Kai leaned back against the wall, arms folded as the vine embedded in Penny's stomach began to smoke, hissing as if steam was rising straight from his soul. How original, Kai thought acidly. Of course the curse wasn't tied to the blade. Fate was just snapping back into place. He looked again and noticed Alice's hand curling over Quentin's fingers. A thought crystallized. Is it because of that? This was what fate wanted, the crucible to bring those two closer. This ordeal wasn't just punishment. It was orchestration. It was about bringing them closer. He sighed, eyes drifting shut for a moment. I hate fate. Then his eyelids snapped open. Speaking of fate, now that Julia isn't with Richard, who the hell is going to replace her? And if Richard's group still summons that fox god? He pressed his thumb to his forehead, thinking. How the hell do I stop them from summoning that damn fox spirit? Maybe I can stop it, he mused. Or maybe I should just prepare for when they do. Either way. First things first. Kai straightened and left the hospital room. There was another meeting he still needed to continue. The hallway was mostly empty. He was halfway past the old conservatory when his vampiric hearing picked up something, a ragged, muffled struggle. Kai's head turned sharply. Without hesitation, he vanished in a blur. But it was already too late. By the time he reached the clean room, the first thing that hit him was the metallic stench and coppery tang of blood that was thick in the air. He stepped inside the clean room, eyes sweeping fast, and saw Mike, or rather, Martin, whose face was caked in gore, grinning with feral calm. Kai didn't wait to hear whatever was about to crawl out of that mouth. He surged forward, snatched him by the throat, and hurled him bodily back into the room. Mike slammed against the far wall, ribs cracking. Kai stepped in after him. Kai's gaze snapped to the floor where Eliza's headless body lay in a widening pool of crimson. He didn't speak. Not at first. He just stared. Then slowly turned to Martin, staggered upright, lifting one blood-slick hand. His lips parted. Kai's voice was low and even. I thought I told you, don't bother pretending with me. Martin then laughed with Mike's ruined voice, but it was cut short as Kai blurred forward again, his hand tightening around Mike's throat. You and I, Kai whispered, eyes glowing faintly, we're going to pick up where we left off. A sudden voice cut through the tension. Oh God! Professor Fogg stood at the door, staring at Eliza's remains. Kai, put him down. Kai didn't turn. This isn't your student anymore, Fogg. It's a meat puppet. The only mercy left is to end it. He pulled Mike closer, their faces inches apart. And as for you, Martin. His vampire visage surfaced, eyes dark, fangs bared. I will hunt you until there is nothing left of you but a burning corpse beneath my feet. If you think all the magic in the wellspring can save you, you are sorely mistaken. He tightened his grip. Martin's eyes widened, his hand clawing at Kai's wrist. Martin struggled, but then, with a sharp crack, his neck snapped. The body crumpled to the floor like an empty sack. Kai turned his ears, catching the sound of a new arrival. It was Elliot, standing frozen in the doorway, eyes fixed on the scene before him. His expression tight. Kai gave him a long look as his gaze met his. Better me than you, buddy, he thought grimly. Read an advance of 10+ chapters on my Patreon. Patreon.com/FredoZY. Chapter 50, Chapter 50, Fury is real? He was staring at the ceiling, the glow of early morning leaking faintly through the curtains at the other end of the room. Julia lay beside him, her breath even and soft as she slept. Kai had gotten back from Breakables late last night. She was already asleep by the time he got in, and thanks to being keyed into the boundary spell, he had no trouble getting through. It had been a few days since the incidents and since Mike, or rather Martin wearing Mike's skin, had been killed by him. Things had mostly died down now, at least on the surface. But with Elliot, it was still complicated. It wasn't that they had a falling out or something irreparable. No, it was more like Elliot just needed time. Time to process everything. He blamed himself mostly for not noticing, for not realizing sooner what was happening right under their noses with the fact that his boy toy was just a meat puppet for the beast. But he didn't blame Kai. And that, strangely, was what made it harder. Kai had expected Elliot to be poised, even icy. To hold him responsible, to let the anger seep through in his voice, his gestures. But contrary to that, he was. Hey, Julia's voice cut through his thoughts, pulling him back into the moment. Kai turned toward her. Hi. When'd you get in? She asked, still a little groggy. Kai exhaled slowly. Last night, sorry I didn't make it earlier. Breakables was under lockdown. Julia sat up immediately, frowning. What happened? Kai looked at her for a moment, then decided not to hide anything. There was an incident. At the school, Penny was attacked while trying to protect Quentin from being stabbed by the beast. What the fuck is Q okay and who the hell is the beast? She asked. Kai sighed. Yeah, Q is fine and the beast well. He's from Fury. A very real, very dangerous monster. He attacked Breakables. She blinked, visibly thrown. I'm sorry, what did you just say, Fury? Fury is real. Yeah, as real as the earth we both inhabit, he nodded. Apparently. She shook her head slowly. Okay, this beast who or what is it? He wasn't in the books. Kai looked at her, then gave a tired, knowing sigh. No. He wouldn't be. The books are children's stories. They're not going to include something like him. He was probably kept out on purpose. Julia was quiet for a moment, then her voice softened. Holy shit, you know, Fury, for me and Quentin, it was supposed to be this escape. When we were kids, we'd just get lost in it. Dreaming about it, imagining it. It helped us through a lot of shit. She looked down, quieter now. Helped Quentin more than it helped me. Kai studied her for a second before speaking. A lot of good things have dark roots. Hidden rot under the surface. You don't notice until it's too late, until it leaks out. Julia looked at him, unsettled. How many people died because of him? Kai was quiet, his voice grim. Enough. And I had to do something terrible. To a friend. Was it necessary? She asked. He nodded. Then he added, and the worst part is, the beast was in the story. Just, not written. Her face twisted in confusion. What does that mean? It's Martin Chatwin, Kai said flatly. Julia stared at him like he had just said the moon was made of glass. No fucking way. Later, the two of them were up. Julia was still pacing around the living room, visibly trying to digest the avalanche of revelations. Kai sat on the couch, watching her quietly. You okay? He asked. She looked at him, stunned. Out of everyone, it's little Martin. Kai gave a sarcastic chuckle. Not so little anymore. Also, he's got an extra appendage now, if you catch my drift. Julia shot him a look that was a mix of amusement and disgust. He shrugged. Don't worry about it. She dropped onto the couch beside him. So what exactly does he want? Kai leaned back. He already has what he wants. Now he just wants to make sure no one else gets it with him. She frowned, confused. What does that even mean? Fury. And all the doors that lead there. He wants full control over the place. Total isolation. Julia shook her head, exhausted by the overload. That's a lot. Kai moved closer and wrapped his arm around her shoulders. She leaned into him. He kissed her head gently, then as he was about to say something else. Marina came here, she said suddenly. Kai paused, groaned. You've got to be kidding me. Nope, Julia said. She was looking for you, actually. He raised an eyebrow. She's not the type I'd accept to go look for danger. She's mostly always hiding and finding ways to stay away from death's door. She came to wave the white flag, Julia said. Said you were coming after her. Kai scoffed. Oh yes, she and I have a score to settle. Besides, she still needs to pay for what she did. She hurt you. And James. James was my friend too. She had to learn about retribution, and I know you said I shouldn't do anything, but I couldn't just let that go without punishment. Julia nodded slowly, standing. She walked over to a shelf and pulled something out, a small card. She handed it to Kai. The card shimmered briefly, revealing a number. She left that for you, Julia said. She returned to the couch, laid her head on his chest. So, now what? Kai stared at the ceiling again. I'm supposed to meet someone. A lady in a vegetative state. Julia tilted her head up to look at him with confusion. What? Kai waved it off. Long story, preventive measures. Julia shook her head, exasperated, then suddenly pounced on him with a grin. She wrapped her arms around his neck like a strangling koala and kissed him again, harder this time. Read in advance of 10+ chapters on my Patreon. Patreon.com/FredoZY. Chapter 51, Chapter 51, Thank you. The soft hum of indie music played in the background, blending with the hiss of the espresso machine and the occasional murmur of conversations. Kai sat near the window of the dimly lit coffee shop, stirring his now cold cup of black coffee absent-mindedly. Julia sat across from him, scrolling through her phone, legs crossed, head slightly tilted as if lost in some silent thought. The chair beside him was empty. He was waiting. A soft ding vibrated his phone. He glanced at it and saw Alice's message. Trying to figure out a magical button. Heading to England. Plover's mansion. Let's see what turns up. He read it twice, then leaned back into his chair, lips twitching into a dry smile. This was it. The point in time where Quentin's beloved childhood author would begin his spiral into infamy. Christopher Plover, once a celebrated writer, would soon be revealed as one of the most depraved and vile individuals in recent magical history. The truth about the children's disappearance, the mansion, everything. It still made Kai grit his teeth when he thought about it too long. Monsters often wore charming faces. He typed quickly. Go ahead. I'll meet up with you later. Got something else to handle first. He had just hit send when the door opened, the soft chime above it jingling lightly. Kai turned to the left and spotted the person he'd been waiting for. Larry, tall and slim, dressed in his usual brown jacket and dark cap, walked in and gave him a slight nod. Boss, Larry greeted with a slight grin. Kai leaned forward. What's the update? Larry slid into the chair next to him. Still no sign of Caddy. We've checked everywhere: Brooklyn, Midtown, even the Lower East Side. She's not in New York. Kai didn't look surprised. She was a magician long before Breakbulls ever scouted her. And with all that time around Marina, she probably learned a dozen ways to go completely off-grid. Larry nodded, then added, about the other thing. Tom found him. Kai's brow lifted slightly. And? Well, we couldn't get close. This Richard guy has some sort of protective ward on him. Every time we try to approach, weird stuff happens. Weird like how? Kai frowned. Larry glanced around before leaning in closer. Time skips. Spatial displacements. Tom ended up in a flower shop in Queens once. Another guy lost 10 minutes and found himself sitting on a bench feeding birds. Kai rubbed his temple slowly, sighing. Damn magician. Larry nodded in agreement. But the other one though? A small smile tugged at the corners of his lips. We found her. The woman you wanted located. No protection spells. Nothing. She's basically a sitting duck. Currently staying at the Peregrine Convalescent Home. Kai's smirk came quickly. Well, isn't that considerate of her? Before he could say anything more, Julia returned from the restroom, brushing a strand of her hair behind her ear. Kai, she called. He turned, and when he looked back, Larry was already gone. As Julia reached him, she raised an eyebrow. Who was that? Kai shrugged casually. Another magician. Helping out with a project. Julia gave him a look. Not entirely buying it, but not pressing further either. I have to go meet my sister, she said, slinging her bag over her shoulder. Kai reached into his coat pocket and handed her a neatly folded piece of paper. Here. Work on this. She opened it and her brows lifted slightly. A smile curved her lips as she recognized the spell drawn in his immaculate, sharp handwriting. The cloaking spell, she murmured with a smirk. MMMN. I was just about to ask you about this one. Her eyes lifted to meet his, a glint of amusement and something else dancing in them. You really do know how to gift a woman, don't you? She stepped back, still holding his gaze. Well, what shall I give you, I wonder, she added, voice low and sultry. She turned and walked away before he could respond. Kai stared after her, a smirk of his own curling onto his lips. Oh, I can think of a few things. As the moon hung high and quiet over the city, Kai moved with vampiric speed, slipping like a shadow through the front gates of the Peregrine Convalescent Home. The faint scent of antiseptic and aged wood welcomed him as he passed through the empty reception hall, avoiding detection effortlessly. He glided past rooms, hallways, and dimly lit corners until he reached the door he sought. Without hesitation, he slid inside. A soft click echoed behind him as he locked the door. Inside the room, the gentle hum of the radiator was the only sound. An African-American woman sat in a wheelchair, her silver-streaked hair catching the lamplight as she looked out the window toward the still night. She didn't acknowledge his presence. Kai took a moment to observe her, then walked to her side. Hello, Kira. My name is Kai, he said softly. She remained unmoving, eyes focused beyond the window. Not a word, not a glance. Just silence. Kai sighed. Sorry about the intrusion, but... He moved in front of her, meeting her gaze with a calm intensity. With barely a flicker of effort, he breached her mental defenses. In the blink of an eye, he was no longer in the room but inside her mind. The world around him twisted. Now he stood in a mirrored version of the room, but it was hollow. The wheelchair was empty. The woman was gone. Kai scanned the environment and said with an amused tone, "Hide and go seek, hey." He stepped into the hallway, calling out, "Kira." A powerful force pushed against his consciousness like a wave trying to eject him. It brushed against him, harmlessly deflected. He exhaled in mild frustration. "I don't have time for this." With a casual snap of his fingers, the illusion twisted and folded and he found himself on a bench, seated beside Kira once more. She blinked rapidly, looking around in shock. "How did?" "Hello, Kira," he said again. "Nice to meet you. I'm Kai." She narrowed her eyes. "What do you want?" Kai gave a smirk that didn't ease her worry. "Something simple. To prevent a mess that's about to unfold. One that could, well, hurt some people I care about." She looked at him warily, but eventually sat down beside him. "What does that have to do with me?" He looked at her, his gaze serious. "Everything, my dear. It has everything to do with you." "How so?" He sighed. Suddenly, she found herself holding a warm cup of coffee, and a fresh croissant sat in her lap. She blinked, confused, then heard him say, "Get comfortable." He sat upright, his expression darkening slightly. "You're working on a spell," he said. "Something layered, precise, ancient. It's a piece of what's needed to summon something that shouldn't be summoned." She turned to him slowly, voice sharp. "How do you know that?" He smiled slyly. "A magician never reveals their secrets." He took a breath and continued. "What's being summoned isn't just some demon or spirit. It's a god." She blinked. "Holy shit." "Yeah," he nodded, "but not quite the one you'd expect." "No. This one, it's brutal. Unloving. It doesn't want followers, prayers, or offerings. It wants chaos. It is chaos." She stared at him, her voice tense. "How do you even know that? And how do you know what's going to happen?" Kai sighed, but didn't answer. Time had passed. Now, Kai sat silently. Kira stared into the distance, hands resting on her lap, her voice softer now. "Magic, to me, was a gift," she said. "I discovered it on my own back when I was at MIT. I didn't even think it was real until, well, you know how that goes. One experiment turns into a ritual, and suddenly you're seeing behind the veil." She chuckled weakly. "Even with all that, I loved it. Magic challenged me. It gave me a reason to push past what I thought was possible. To hope. To make the impossible real." She paused, her eyes dimming slightly. "But this," she said, looking back at Kai. "What you've told me. No. This isn't what magic should be used for." Kai tilted his head and replied with a half-sarcastic smirk, "Magic doesn't choose its wielder, unfortunately. Sometimes it falls into the wrong hands, sometimes it creates them." Kira let out an unexpected laugh. He raised a brow. "What's funny?" She smiled. "You're too young to be saying something that deep." Kai chuckled, shaking his head. "The young can be quite knowledgeable too, you know." She glanced at him, amused, and then took a breath. "You know, this is nice," she said, quietly. "Having someone to talk to. Even if it's an intruder." He smiled at that, then looked at her curiously. "If you had a wish, a place you'd rather be, when the end comes, where would you choose?" She looked up, thoughtful. "The Blue Lake Columbines," she said softly. "In Colorado. I've always wanted to see them. I heard the air there smells different. Clean. And the view, like something out of a dream. She closed her eyes. When she opened them again she was lying on soft grass. Before her lay a stretch of wild flowers, the vibrant blue columbines, Colorado's pride, swaying gently in a breeze that smelled of pine and freedom. Beyond them, snow-capped mountains stood proud under a rich blue sky, and the pristine lake shimmered in the distance. She sat up, her eyes wide, overwhelmed by the beauty of it all. Kai lay a few feet away on his back, arms behind his head, basking in the sun with a peaceful smile. Kira turned to him and whispered, "Thank you." They stayed there a while. Then she looked at the horizon and said, "I'm ready now." Kai didn't move, didn't smile. He only said, softly, "I'm sorry." She shook her head, her smile gentle. "No, it's okay," she said. "Thank you for making it beautiful." As his figure began to fade from the mindscape, the flowers swayed harder, and the skies began to blur. Back in the room, the lights buzzed faintly. Kai stood quietly, gazing at Kira. A single tear ran down her cheek, glistening under the room light. Her face was peaceful, her chest no longer rising and falling. And for the first time in a long while, she was smiling. Read in advance of 10+ chapters on my Patreon. Patreon.com/FredoZY. Chapter 52, Chapter 52, Plover Estate. Kai stepped out of the hospital. Strangely enough, he was not with a heavy heart, but with a strange lightness in his chest. Most people would have called that sick, maybe even cold, but they didn't understand. In the series, Kira had died in complete darkness. The final thing she saw before Julia ended her life at her own request was that same void. For Kai to give her a better ending, that was worth more than pity. That was mercy. She got to really enjoy a wish before the end. He exhaled sharply, muttering under his breath, "Damn it." The thought of what he had just stopped lingered and how close they had been to summoning that disgusting fox god. That wasn't going to happen now, but for some reason Kai knew the possibility of it still happening was very much high. He pulled out his phone, calling his contact. "Tell Tom to keep watching the hospital. Richard will show up soon." She was his wife and next of kin. It won't be long before he hears she's gone. With that, he rushed back to school. Instead of heading for the physical kids' cottage, he veered toward a more secluded section of campus where Elliot's door to England was located. But just as he was about to step through, he spotted Todd loitering nearby. "Going somewhere?" Todd asked. Kai gave him a dry look. "No, I'm just standing here dramatically for the vibes." Todd blinked, then nodded. "Cool. On second thought." Kai tilted his head, "Maybe you can help me. Where was Elliot last before he left?" Todd thought for a moment. One of the lounge rooms. Usually crashes on the couch there." Kai went inside, scanning the area. He crouched low, his eyes darting across the fabric until he spotted a single strand of hair. He plucked it up, holding it between two fingers with a satisfied smirk. Todd's voice came from behind him. "What's that for?" "Oh, you know, science." Todd frowned. Kai straightened up, brushing past him. "Yeah, by now. And hey, try not to choke on your own curiosity." Stepping through Elliot's door, Kai found himself in a tea shop. Of course. Elliot would choose a tea shop instead of a wine bar. A woman behind the counter smiled. "What can I get you?" "Oh, nothing, thanks," Kai replied politely. "Actually, mind if I use your bathroom?" She pointed the way, and moments later he was inside the cramped little washroom. Locking the door, Kai pulled out the strand of hair, murmuring the words to a locator spell. A while later, he was standing outside the Plover estate. Night clung to the air, cool and tense. The front doors burst open and Elliot and Alice came rushing out. "We should go back in there," Alice whispered urgently. "Shhhhhh," Elliot hissed. "I'm trying to think." And I'm out of cigarettes. This is dire. Quentin appeared, jogging toward them. Oh my god, you're okay. He pulled Alice into a hug, relief flooding his face. We're great, thanks for asking, Elliot quipped dryly. Where's Penny? Quentin shrugged. Knowing him? Disneyland by now. He glanced back at the mansion. What if he got to Fieri? What did he do to Martin? Alice frowned. What are you talking about? Elliot's confusion matched hers. Quentin hesitated. I saw something in there. Who Plover really was? What he was doing to Martin Chatwin? Realization washed over their faces, but Elliot still asked, what was he doing? Another voice answered before Quentin could speak. Well, guessing from QS silence, I'd say his favorite author was a defiling piece of pig. Kai, how did you know what? Never mind, the more the merrier, Elliot said. Alice's eyes widened. Oh God! The poor kid, Quentin muttered. He was just trying to get a button to Fieri so he could escape this monster, who generations of idiots like me have been worshipping like a literary god. Kai's expression hardened. No one could have known what was happening. You can't blame anyone except the one who commits the crime. But the truth is, sometimes the victim becomes something entirely different because of it. Quentin looked down. He was learning magic to get stronger and to travel. He wanted to grow extra fingers for spells. Elliot blinked. Wait, grow fingers? Like? What if the beast wasn't from Fieri? Quentin cut in. Kai's lips curved slightly, but he stayed silent, listening. What if he went there because he had access through these kids he told stories to when he wasn't, drugging and raping them? Quentin trailed off. Oh Jesus, Elliot breathed. Hearing footsteps, Kai murmured, Penny's here. Alice blinked. What? Elliot smirked. Well, I still have the capacity to be surprised. We thought you ditched us. Penny came into view, stopping short when he saw Kai. What the fuck are you doing here? Good to see you too, Kai replied, dripping sarcasm. Alice's gaze moved between them. What happened to you? Penny opened his mouth, frustration on his face, but Kai beat him to it. He most like traveled a mile off and ended up in a tree. Yet, Penny said flatly while looking at Kai strangely for knowing that, while trying to get away from Prudence's dungeon. Elliot scoffed. Not so precise with that travel, hey. Shut up, Penny muttered. Quentin's brows furrowed. Wait, what do you mean, dungeon? Kai answered for him. Yet, Penny said, bitch calls it the quiet place cause that's not fucking psychotic. There's a storm cellar around the back. Quentin's eyes widened. That's where she took the housekeeper's kids. He's got the button in his pocket. Let's go. Before he could move, Kai stepped in front of him. Man, when it comes to Fieri, do you ever just chill? Penny snorted. Says the guy who thinks too much sense is dangerous. Quickest way to let Prudence grab us immediately. Dislike that, Elliot muttered. Quentin sighed. Okay, I know what to do about her. Give me a 10-minute head start, then head to the cellar. Kai watched him run off, sighing to himself. Burning the whole house down sounded tempting, but instead, he decided to follow Quentin. Inside, Quentin was rifling through the study. We need to find and spread the evidence of what Christopher was doing. He kept pictures, so let's go for that, he said. Kai spotted a stack of photographs on the desk. He froze. Wait, this? Oh, yeah, he did have a hobby of taking their pictures before raping them. His anger flared, a dangerous edge creeping into his voice. Oh, I'll kill him too. Yeah, Quentin muttered. Well, we need spread them around. 10 minutes later, Quentin returned. We should get out of here. Kai shook his head. Go ahead. I'll meet you. Quentin hesitated, then nodded, and slipped away, leaving Kai alone in the study. Read in advance of 10+ chapters on my Patreon. patreon.com/FredoZY